Chapter 545. The phoenix's cry reached the 9 heavens, and the sword light soared into the sky. Knowing Destiny, who had returned in anger, slashed the universe with his sword, splitting the entire primitive land into 2. In front of the 2, red clothes appeared. Looking at the heavily injured bright moon, the killing intent in her eyes could no longer be concealed. Phoenix essence entered and stabilized Bright Moon's injuries. Ning Chen glanced at the woman beside Bright Moon and said, "Purple Crystal, take Bright Moon and leave first." "Yes." Purple Crystal suppressed the throbbing in her heart and nodded. She then took Bright Moon and quickly retreated out of Primitive Land. In the depths of Primitive Land, the giant skull's demonic aura was getting stronger and stronger. Its endless suction force continued to devour the soul consciousness of the surrounding living beings. The Primitive Land, which was full of life before, had turned into a land of death. Shattered bones and blood were everywhere. The heavily injured Yaochilua had blood dripping from her chest. It was getting harder and harder for her to hold on. "Yaochilua, hold on." Bai Yunlian resisted the soul-devouring ability of the demonic aura while trying his best to stabilize the soul consciousness that was about to leave her body. "White Flood Dragon, live on." Yaochilua pushed the former away with a palm strike. She then leaped forward like a moth to a flame, rushing towards the giant skull in the sky. "Bald donkey, come with me to hell." As he spoke, streams of white flames soared into the sky, turning into a heavenly net that trapped the 2 of them within. In the next moment, a terrifying explosion that shook the heavens and earth rang out. The heavenly net trapped them, and the repercussions still gushed out for hundreds of li, completely razing the primitive land to the ground. In the aftermath, Bodhi was pushed back dozens of feet. His body was covered in blood. He had actually survived the Prime's self-destruction. However, at this moment, a terrifying sword light flashed past. It was so fast that no one could see it. When Bodhi turned around, he was already facing a calamity of death. "Ah!" The sword entered his body, and he retreated a few steps. Blood dripped from the corner of Bodhi's mouth. Looking at the most familiar figure in front of him, his demonized Buddha face flashed with anger. He flipped his palm and formed a seal, slamming it towards the latter. Clang! A huge vibration rang out. The Buddha's palm struck the green cauldron. A huge force was transmitted, and knowing Destiny was sent flying. "Bald donkey, pay with your life for Yaochilua." Bai Yunlian leaped forward. His blood-stained sword light flashed past, and killing intent filled the sky. Bodhi waved his hand and took back the skull prayer beads. He spread out his arms to block the demon venerable killer move. The scattered sword light condensed once more at Bodhi's chest. After piercing half an inch in, it could no longer advance any further. The rosary beads wrapped around his arm. The white clouds were not strong enough. He could neither advance nor retreat. Subhoodie's killing intent condensed and he sent out a palm strike towards the former's chest. At this moment, a green cauldron came crashing down between the 2 of them. Bang! The Buddha's palm slapped on the green cauldron. Bai Yunlian flew out together with the green cauldron and landed on the ground, vomiting blood. The abnormally powerful Subhoodie's palm force was unparalleled. The green cauldron blocked the killing intent, but it couldn't block the remnant force that passed through. The instant Bai Yunlian flew out, Mo Kuang's sword arrived once again. His sword was extremely fast, and his body was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, Mo Kuang once again pierced into the previous sword wound. The sword pierced into Subhoodie's body once more. The heavily wounded Subhoodie's injuries worsened and his blood energy shook. He endured the pain in his chest and gathered demonic essence in his palm to counterattack. Waterfall. Mo Kuang's demonic palm arrived, and a waterfall surged from the ground. It directly shook knowing Destiny away. Bai Yunlian then passed by, and the water-light sword turned into a 100-feet-long waterfall that locked onto Subhoodie. 6 calamities of demons, wind weapon calamity. In the face of danger, Subhuti used his demonic technique again. The wind roared and circled around him. The waterlight waterfall was immediately restrained and couldn't get close. Sword form, 9 suns burning the heavens. Seeing this, Ning Chen stepped into the air and used his sword form and heavenly book parallel flow again. 9 sword suns circled around, and the wind helped the fire. The power of the 9 suns rose rapidly. In the next moment, the sword suns fell from the sky and slashed towards the Buddha in the hurricane. Useless technique. With a furious roar, the skull rosary beads in Subhuti's hand shone with an evil light. They spun rapidly in the air and turned into a sky screen, blocking the 9 falling suns. White Flood Dragon. Ning Chen shouted. Bai Yunlian understood and slashed with his water wave sword. Waterfalls rose from the ground and attacked Subhuti, who had lost the protection of the rosary beads. Naive. Subhuti's expression turned cold. The demonic essence around him surged and turned into a demonic cocoon to protect his demonic body. Demons and evil, the source of calamity. Enter the void. In an instant, demonic power spread out violently, destroying the 9 suns and swallowing the waterfall. The destructive power made all living beings outside the primitive land feel the fear of doomsday. In the center of the storm, Ning Chen summoned the green cauldron to block the demonic power, but he was still sent flying hundreds of meters away. On the other side, Bai Yunlian wasn't faring much better. Although he had the waterfall to block the demonic power, he couldn't dispel it. He was forced back dozens of steps, blood staining his dress. The completely demonized Subhuti's strength had reached a shocking level. Even though Yao Qilua didn't hesitate to blow herself up to injure him, he was still not an ordinary sovereign. Even with Bai Yunlian and knowing destiny working together, they were still at a disadvantage. White Flood Dragon, leave first, Ning Chen said as he wiped the blood from his mouth. No, Bai Yunlian replied directly. If you don't leave, I won't be able to use my full strength. Don't worry, I won't die. You won't be able to take revenge even if you stay here, Ning Chen said seriously. Bai Yunlian narrowed his eyes and said, You're not lying to me? I never lie, Ning Chen said seriously. Bai Yunlian was silent. After a while, he nodded and said, Come out alive. Have you finished discussing? If you're done, I can send you to hell together. Subhuti walked out from the sandstorm. The prayer beads formed by 108 skulls in his hand were surrounded by demonic energy. His body was covered in a strange black aura. Under his fluttering black hair, his Buddha face was no longer as calm as before. All that was left was coldness and killing intent. Go! With a shout, Hong Yi moved again. Fast as a flash of a sword, he slashed out rays of killing light from all directions, aiming at Subhuti's major acupoints. How can a demon run rampant in front of Subhuti? Ghost Subhuti snorted. Demonic energy erupted from his body, and the rays of sword light disappeared. The moment the two clashed, Bai Yunlian no longer hesitated. He slashed out with his sword, sweeping away the surrounding demonic energy, and quickly retreated. You want to leave? Wishful thinking. Ghost Subhuti took a step forward, and his figure flashed, wanting to stop the demon venerable. However, Mo Kuang's sword flashed behind him and slashed at his back. Subhuti turned around to block the attack. In that instant, Bai Yunlian had already disappeared into the distance. Venerable Subhuti, it's finally just the two of us left. Ning Chen pulled out his sword and retreated, looking at the demonized Subhuti in front of him. With just you, idiot. Ghost Subhuti snorted and mocked. Of course, I'm not enough by myself. But what if I add them? As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Chen's phoenix chi soared to the peak. The red phoenix fire soared into the sky. The heaven and earth seemed to have sensed it. With a loud boom, the sky was filled with thunder and lightning. Tribulation of the four symbols. Subhuti's expression changed. Looking at the huge commotion in the sky, his black eyes flashed with coldness. In the next moment, the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise descended from the sky. The pressure of the four symbols could be felt from thousands of miles away. He's back. In the Zhao family in the north, a purple-robed girl opened her eyes and looked toward the southwest of Zhongzhou. There was no mistake, only his heavenly tribulation could be so terrifying. In the Taibai prefecture, the Taibai prefecture lord with disheveled hair was staring into the distance in a daze. He was still alive. In the depths of the primitive land, the four symbols gods descended. The power of the heavenly tribulation sealed off 100 miles. There was no way to escape. Bodhi and knowing destiny. One of them had monstrous devil chi while the other was full of sin. The four symbols' divine tribulations were unprecedentedly terrifying and descended upon the land. The flattened primitive land collapsed once again. Heaven and earth shook and lava spewed out. The scene of doomsday frightened the students of the distant academies. Venerable Subhuti, the real battle between us is coming. Among the four symbols gods, Ning Chen spun Mo Kuang in his hand and said coldly. You want to use the power of the heavenly tribulation to kill me? Difficult. Subhuti spun the skull prayer beads. Demonic chi surged out of the beads and filled the sky, forming a terrifying demonic saber. The skull prayer beads wrapped around his hand and the saber's hilt. Endless demonic chi poured into the saber. Let the slaughter begin. With a shout, Bodhi's body moved, and the devil saber slashed out. Instantly, space began to crumble, and everything within 100 kilometers collapsed. Ning Chen stepped forward and his figure flashed, dodging the saber. Immediately, Mo Kuang gathered the heroic chi of the 8 directions sword and slashed at the former. At the same time, the four symbols gods rushed toward the two people in the heavenly tribulation. The azure dragon, black tortoise, vermilion bird, and white tiger trapped knowing destiny. The azure dragon's breath dissipated the demonic chi. The black tortoise blocked the demonic chi. On the other side, the vermilion bird's divine flames burned the sky. The white tiger attacked quickly. They were divided into two sides, but they still couldn't stop the two's killing intent. Their saber and sword left blood on their opponent's body. According to the laws of heaven and earth, the strength of the heavenly tribulation was different for each person. The two people affected by the four symbols' heavenly tribulation had to divide their attention. They had to deal with the tribulation while looking for opportunities to deal with it. The power of the four symbols' heavenly tribulation was astonishing. In less than 15 minutes, the two were injured. Their hands were stained red, but they didn't stop holding their weapons. Fighting against the mortal supremes again, knowing destiny's fighting spirit rose to an unprecedented level. The blood of the azure dragon, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise hovered in his body. Yama created the world and evolved the four symbols. Scenes of the past reappeared in front of his eyes. The essence of the four symbols, the gods in charge of the four directions, gold, wood, water, and fire, were the foundation of creation. That's why there's Tai Chi. It's because of yin and yang. Yin and yang give birth to the four symbols, wood, fire, metal, and water. Tai Chi is one. It's called the four symbols divine seal. Knowing destiny used the opportunity of the four symbols heavenly tribulation as a guide in the immortal palace, and with the help of the four symbols heavenly tribulation's blood, a drop of phoenix blood flew out. It turned into a phoenix and soared into the sky. It converged with the four symbols heavenly tribulation and temporarily filled the gap of the white tiger. The 4 drops of heavenly tribulation's blood continued to absorb the power of the 4 symbols heavenly tribulation. In an instant, the world became solemn. The 4 symbols divine seal sword appeared. It pierced through the white tiger and vermilion bird and slashed toward Bodhi. Surrounded by the azure dragon and black tortoise, Bodhi's demonic blade slashed and the gods scattered. However, at this moment, a sword light that even the world lost its color swept over. Before he could react, the sword light had penetrated his body, bringing with it blood. Chapter 546. In the primitive land, the knowing destiny sword technique appeared for the first time in the human world. It absorbed the power of the four symbols tribulations and its power was raised to the extreme. It heavily injured Bodhi. Blood splattered between heaven and earth. The collapsed four symbols deities continued to reform. In the blink of an eye, the four symbols reappeared with heavenly power. Bodhi was dyed red and his body staggered. His demonic body was heavily injured and the Buddhist power rebounded. The Buddha and the demon clashed violently. With the protection of the Buddhist energy, Bodhi temporarily regained his consciousness. The indestructible body of the Vajra healed his injuries and the wound of the God-sealing sword gradually disappeared. After a while, Bodhi opened his eyes and looked at the four symbols and the knowing destiny sword technique. He sighed softly and did not say a word. He took advantage of the temporary clarity and walked away. Bodhi, who had recovered his pure heart, was immune to all tribulations. The four symbols deities did not stop him and allowed him to leave. Ning Chen could not stop him in the middle of the tribulation. Mo Kuang's sword radiance soared as he fought the four symbols. The sky was filled with the sounds of battle. The azure dragon breathed, the vermilion bird spread its wings, the white tiger split the sky, and the black tortoise shook the earth. Even though the four symbols deities had died, the world was still imprinted with the images of the four symbols. Every time a martial artist went through a tribulation, the images would descend. The first disaster of the three disasters stage was the fire of karma. The second disaster was the disaster of the four symbols. This was the path to perfection. Only by overcoming it could one be closer to perfection. The attacks of the four symbols deities became fiercer and fiercer. The knowing destiny sword technique in the middle of the battle was activated to the extreme. He only attacked and did not defend. Blood splattered everywhere, but his sword did not waver. All the supremes in the central state looked at the knowing destiny sword technique in the primitive land with complicated expressions. Perhaps, the second legend of Xia Kingdom would appear in the human world soon. The spring and autumn sword technique was famous all over the world. Outside the primitive land, Bai Yunlian stood quietly. A pair of star-like eyes looked at the figure in the tribulation. Rays of brilliance flashed continuously. Compared to the demon race with long lifespans, although the human race's life was short, the speed of improvement was shocking. She remembered when she first met this young man, he was so weak in her eyes. She did not expect him to catch up to her in just a few years. If she wanted to defeat him now, she would have to pay an unimaginable price. Amethyst, he's leaving so quickly. Not far away, Bright Moon, who had just woken up, looked at the figure in the sky and said softly. From the beginning to the end, Marquis Jiming has always been in front of everyone. He is the military counselor's only enemy, but also the military counselor's only friend, Purple Crystal said calmly. Ever since Jiming carried the battered Great Xia on his shoulders, he probably never stopped to rest. Today, with the 5 regions merged, the top cultivators of the Divine Prefecture were obviously weaker than those of the other 4 regions. However, Jiming Marquis of the Great Xia was still not weaker than anyone else. She had a feeling that one day, none of them would be able to keep up with the Marquis. In the sky above the primitive land, the battle between the 4 symbols and the knowing destiny state had reached its climax. Each of the 4 symbols controlled the origin of heaven and earth, leaving wounds on the knowing destiny state. However, the sword of the knowing destiny state was becoming more and more perfect. Returning to the void and entering the chaos, it was gradually approaching the only state. First form. The moment the sword was formed, a crack appeared on the space barrier of the only state. The first form of the 4 symbols deity sword technique was finally completed. One sword gathered the 4 symbols, and the sword waves swept past. The catastrophe of the 4 symbols was broken. Outside the primitive land, Mingyu saw that the 4 symbols deities in the sky had dissipated. She was delighted, but immediately felt a little scared. She subconsciously hid behind the purple crystal. She had snuck out. Would the bad guys scold her? Purple Crystal saw the fear in Ming Yu's eyes and felt helpless. Maybe in this world, only the Marquis Jiming could make His Majesty afraid. After a while, outside the primitive land, the red light gathered and Ning Chen appeared. He glanced at Bai Yunlian, who was waiting quietly, and nodded slightly to greet him. It turned out that the pair of eyes that he had felt familiar with was from the white flood dragon at the burial stream. He had not recognized Bai Yunlian and the white flood dragon. He was really stupid. White flood dragon, you may not be able to kill me now, Ning Chen said with a smile. He had angered the white flood dragon at the burial stream and made the half-year agreement. He had wanted to delay as much as possible, but he did not expect that it would be delayed for 4 years. Where are you going? Bai Yunlian did not reply and changed the topic. Home, to the East Divine Prefecture, Ning Chen said softly. I'll go with you, Bai Yunlian said directly without any embarrassment. Demons had their demons and were simple and direct. Although he had entered the human world before, he could not learn how to live in the human world. Why? Ning Chen narrowed his eyes and asked. Bai Yunlian looked at the completely destroyed primitive land and a trace of sadness flashed across his face. He said lightly, in the human world, I only know you. Ning Chen did not say anything more and walked to the other side. Let's go. Bai Yunlian heard this and restrained his emotions and followed. Not far away, Ming Yu saw Jiming walking over and lowered her head so much that she almost hid behind Purple Crystal. Marquis, Purple Crystal said respectfully. Next time, don't let her fool around, Ning Chen said calmly. Yes, Purple Crystal nodded. Ming Yu, come here. Ning Chen looked at the girl behind Purple Crystal and said. Ming Yu heard this and walked out slowly. She lowered her head and said softly, I won't do it next time. You've grown up. Ning Chen reached out and rubbed the little girl's hair. He did not lecture her anymore. He had already taught her what needed to be said. The current era belonged to her and he would not interfere anymore. Bad guy, you're not angry with me, right? Ming Yu secretly raised her head and asked softly. Ning Chen smiled and said, let's go. I'll take you home. Hearing this, Ming Yu's eyebrows curved as she nodded vigorously. Daughter? Bai Yunlian looked puzzled. Something like that. Ning Chen replied and did not explain further. Perhaps time had passed too quickly. He felt that the 7 or 8 years old girl had not grown up yet. Bad guy, you don't know. That Xia Qi always wants to take my territory. Along the way, Ming Yu hugged Ning Chen's arm and chattered non-stop. She told him everything that had happened in the past few years, big and small. Naturally, she did not forget to complain about Xia Qi. Ning Chen listened quietly. Big and small matters, he listened to them one by one. There was not a trace of impatience on his face. As she spoke, Ming Yu's eyes reddened and tears fell unconsciously. She reached out and wiped her tears. She only showed her weak side to the young man beside her, but she did not want him to see it. Ning Chen raised his hand and gently wiped away the tears on the little girl's face. He was careful and gentle. It was not a fortunate thing to be born as an emperor. Especially when she had to carefully hide her identity as a woman. Perhaps only she knew the hardships involved. Chapter 547. Eastern Divine Prefecture, Great Xia Dynasty, 100 miles away from the imperial city, the 4 of them parted ways. Ming Yu's eyes were filled with tears, full of reluctance. In the end, Ming Yu and Zi Jing continued to head north. As an emperor, how could she be as willful as she was when she was young? Ning Chen quietly watched Ming Yu disappear from his sight. After a long time, he continued to walk towards the imperial city with Bai Yunlian. In the imperial palace, a guard ran in and knelt down to report. Xia Qi, who was correcting memorials, immediately got up and walked out of the main hall. In the imperial city, the imperial guards were constantly mobilized. The people were shocked, not knowing what had happened. In the distance, Red walked over. After 10 years, it was the first time he had returned. The imperial guards who had been waiting for a long time knelt down and said respectfully, "Welcome, Marquis. Welcome, Marquis. Welcome, Marquis." Batch after batch of soldiers knelt down and used their own methods to welcome Marquis' return. When the people in the city heard this earth-shattering voice, they all looked at the red-clothed young man walking over. Many of the older people recognized the Marquis from back then. Their expressions changed, and they immediately knelt down. Jiming Marquis, the most controversial Marquis in Great Xia. However, no one could deny that in the most difficult days of Great Xia, it was this handsome and calm young man who held up the entire Great Xia. "Grandpa, who is this brother?" A child who was not even 10 years old looked at the kneeling figure and asked curiously. "Marquis of Great Xia." Beside the child, the old man said softly. When the child heard this, his eyes flashed with envy and worship. He said, "When I grow up, I also want to be a marquis." The elder did not praise or blame him, he only said softly, "Wu Ho, in the Xia, what you represent is not power or glory, but responsibility and sacrifice. Without a will as firm as a rock, you will not be able to bear this heavy burden." In the 1,000 years of Great Xia, Marquis after Marquis, those who died of old age were few and far between. After the peace of Great Xia, it was the blood of many Marquis. For 1,000 years, no one retreated. In the Battle of Gods, many Marquis of Great Xia were killed and became the most painful day in Great Xia. It was because of this that the lords of the 9 cities had the courage to rebel. Fortunately, Jiming Marquis was still alive and had single-handedly suppressed all the rebellions. In the imperial city, after kneeling, there was an unprecedented silence. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Only the sound of footsteps clearly fell into everyone's hearts. "Get up." Hong Yi stopped 10 steps away. "Yes." The kneeling commoners and imperial army soldiers received their orders and stood up. At this moment, the sound of carriages came from behind the group. Dragon guards quickly followed them over. Ning Chen shifted his gaze and looked forward. A gentle look flashed across his calm face. "Master." When the carriage stopped, Xia Qi pushed away the people who were supporting him and walked forward. Unconsciously, tears welled up in his eyes. Men do not easily shed tears, even more so for emperors. Ning Chen patted the former's shoulder and said gently. It turned out that they had really grown up. Xia Qi nodded and put away his excitement. He said, "Master, come back to the palace with me. Today, I'll hold a welcoming dinner for you in the palace." "No need." Ning Chen smiled and shook his head. "I don't have much time left. I just want to spend more time with your imperial grandmother. As for the welcoming dinner, there's no need." When Xia Qi heard this, he wanted to persuade him again, but in the end, he did not say anything. "Let's go. It's getting late. Also, let the soldiers return to their positions." Ning Chen said gently. Xia Qi nodded. He turned around and gave the order for the generals to leave. Not long after, the imperial army soldiers left. Ning Chen and Xia Qi walked away. On the road, the two of them walked in front. The imperial guards all followed behind them. They were very clear that with the martial Marquis present, no one in the world could hurt His Majesty. When they approached the palace, Ning Chen stopped and looked at Xia Qi, who was as tall as him. He said softly, "Go back. Don't delay the matters of the court." Xia Qi was reluctant, but he knew his master's temperament. He could only return to the palace for now. Ning Chen watched Xia Qi enter the palace, then turned and walked towards the imperial mausoleum. When he passed by the manor of the Marquis of Jiming, Ning Chen paused for a moment. In the end, he did not enter and continued walking. In the imperial mausoleum, in front of the Zhangsun mausoleum, Red Clothes walked over. At this moment, he returned to being ordinary. He was no longer Jiming, no longer the world-famous sword art peak. He was just a wanderer who had left home for many years and returned alone. "Empress, I'm back." Looking at the mausoleum in front of him, Ning Chen knelt down and said softly. The bleak autumn wind blew a faint chill. His tired heart temporarily calmed down. At the same time, in the homeland of West Buddha, on the desolate great wilderness, the celestial pride disappeared in a flash. The celestial corpse that brought Jiming back from the heavens beyond heaven was patrolling west. The phoenix that had been chasing after it was gone. Between the safety of Mingyu and the whereabouts of the celestial palanquin, Ning Chen had to make a choice. He went to the primitive land first to save Mingyu's life. On the Tianfu planet, on the third day after Jiming left, the Palace of Seven Kills rose from the ground and rushed into the sky. It also walked on the starry sky road. No one knew where it was headed. After Yan Yuntian left, the younger generation on planet Tianfu all let out a sigh of relief. That huge mountain had been pressing down on them, blocking out the light of everyone else. The word heavenly genius could only dance for one person. In the Tianxiang dynasty, Xiao Libi took away all the ancient books on mechanisms and formations. He left a few simple words for the emperor of the Tianxiang dynasty and left again. 10 days later, after handing over 30% of the star soul iron, the Pill Pagoda finally met its most terrifying opponent. The honorable swordsman of the Tianfu Holy Land came personally. His seemingly ordinary sword became the Pill Pagoda's most terrifying nightmare. The honorable swordsman attacked and cut the Pill Pagoda in half. Honorable Zhenyang was furious and fought with him. The result was without a doubt. Honorable Zhenyang lost miserably. Honorable Dong Sun came later but was also defeated by the only sword in the Tianfu Holy Land. Just as the Pill Pagoda was forced into a corner, the Grand Pagoda Master, who rarely showed himself, finally appeared and barely managed to stop the honorable swordsman. The battle between the two alarmed the entire Tianfu planet. While they were amazed by the Grand Pagoda Master's shocking cultivation, they were even more shocked by the honorable swordsman's strength. The battle reached its climax. In the destructive airflow, a fairy-like figure appeared and blocked the two. The Tianfu Holy Land star venerate, Chao Tianxi, appeared. This godlike woman was deeply imprinted in the hearts of everyone on the Tianfu planet. She was truly above the honorable realm. She was an absolute existence that transcended the boundaries of the mortal world. In the face of such an opponent, the Pill Pagoda had no choice but to submit and hand over all the star's soul iron. After this display of power, no one in the world dared to resist. They all took the initiative to send the star's soul iron to the Tianfu Holy Land. Xiao Libi returned to the Tianfu Holy Land again and continued to read all the ancient books on formations and mechanisms in the Tianxiang dynasty and the Tianfu Holy Land. In the star Soul Life Sea, the unfamiliar planet was getting closer and closer to the Tianfu Holy Land. This meant that there was less and less time left for them. Destruction and rebirth all depended on the final battle. After Chao Tianxi returned to the Tianfu Holy Land, he didn't leave. He stood in the depths of the Tianfu Holy Land day and night, refining the blazing star soul iron gathered from the entire Tianfu Holy Land. Tian Xiang carved the formations he found in the ancient books onto the star soul iron. He did it again and again, day and night without stopping. On the Tianfu Holy Land, from the nobles to the commoners, everyone still lived as usual. They didn't know that the Tianfu Holy Land's calamity was right in front of them. Tian Xiang and Chao Tianxi concealed the news that the planet was about to collide with the Tianfu Holy Land. People's hearts were hard to predict. This kind of thing couldn't be made public. If it was denied, the entire Tianfu Holy Land would fall into chaos. Before the apocalypse, rules and etiquette would be completely abandoned by the fearful people. If someone pushed it in the dark, the Tianfu Holy Land would be finished before the planet even descended. At the same time, in the homeland of West Buddha, Changling, knowing destiny's main body woke up. He had lost his cultivation and had just recovered from his injuries. His body was still weak, but his consciousness was much clearer. Seeing this, the noble woman breathed a sigh of relief. If her negligence caused knowing Destiny's main body to never wake up, then she would regret it for the rest of her life. Ning Chen looked at the woman in front of him with the same face but completely different aura. After a short pause, he understood. Chang Yu? Ning Chen asked. My name is Chang Yu, the noble woman of Changling. Chang Yu is just a name my avatar came up with for convenience, the noble woman replied. I didn't expect the noble woman to also cultivate the art of 2 transformations. Ning Chen sighed softly. The 5 regions were originally one world. Although the eastern divine land separated from the 5 regions 30,000 years ago, many cultivation methods were not lost. My current body has reached the peak of perfection. I cultivated my avatar because I wanted to break free from the shackles of the Dragon's Gate when my 2 bodies merge again. I wanted to break free from the shackles of the Dragon's Gate and reach the legendary realm above supremacy, the noble woman explained. Did you succeed? Ning Chen asked. My avatar has reached perfection and is stabilizing its realm. With the help of the life scroll, when my 2 bodies merge, there shouldn't be any rejection. I have a 30% chance of reaching the realm above supremacy, the noble woman replied. 30%. Ning Chen murmured softly. It's not low anymore. The noble woman nodded. It was indeed not low. In the entire world, for tens of thousands of years, no one had taken this important step. One could imagine how difficult this step was. If the noble woman has any other needs, just say it. I only hope that if the noble woman really takes this step one day, you can tell me if the realm above supremacy can bring people back from the dead, Ning Chen said. Hearing this, the noble woman sighed inwardly. Her expression was very serious. If there really is a way to bring people back from the dead, as long as the noble woman can do it, even if I have to give up all of Changling, I will help you once. Many thanks, Ning Chen replied. Ji Ming, I have trapped you for nearly 20 years. Now, the promise between you and me has been fulfilled. It is up to you to decide whether to leave or stay. However, at this point, the noble woman hesitated slightly and continued, your current body has lost its cultivation. It is too dangerous to leave now. The phoenix body is already searching for a way to bring people back from the dead. You have the 4 scrolls of the heavenly books and the merit of saving the world. If you can put aside everything and focus on cultivation, your progress will not lose to anyone. The path to immortality is hard to find. Rather than placing your hopes on immortality, why not try to ascend to immortality yourself? Chapter 548. In the northwest of the imperial city, in front of Zhang Xuan's tomb, Hong Yi had been kneeling for 3 days. On the 3rd day, autumn rain fell from the sky, covering the lonely imperial mausoleum and drenching Ji Ming's clothes. A wanderer who had left home could only return to the side of his elders. Only then could his tired heart find temporary peace. Ji Ming did not know his own fate. He had walked for too long and was covered in hardships. In the distance, a beautiful figure appeared. Her starry eyes flashed with a strange light. In her eyes, he was a despicable, shameless, stubborn, persistent human who never knew how to give up. This was the first time she had seen him like this. It turned out that he also had a weak side. After 3 days and 3 nights, everyone in the imperial city had returned. However, no one dared to disturb him. Xia Qi came several times and looked at his master kneeling in front of the tomb. In the end, he did not go forward. However, there was one exception. On the 3rd day, when the sun was about to set, she slowly walked over. Xia Xinyu, the most beautiful woman in the great Xia 10 years ago. 10 years later, she was still the same. You're back. The gentle words were like the most ordinary greetings between friends. The 2 of them had gone through countless trials and tribulations. They had gained a lot, but lost even more. Yes. Ning Chen nodded. Xia Xinyu stepped forward and gently wiped away the autumn dust on the tomb. Then she asked calmly, "When are you leaving?" "Tonight." Ning Chen replied. "Take care. If you're tired, come back." Xia Xinyu said softly. "Yes." Ning Chen nodded once again and agreed. "I won't disturb you. Accompany mother well. If fate wills it, we'll meet again." After that, Xia Xinyu did not stay any longer and walked away. The two of them passed by each other. It was like a portrayal of their lives. If they missed each other, it would be difficult to make up for it. The sun set and the moon rose. Stars filled the sky. The person under the moon slowly stood up. Outside the imperial mausoleum, the 6 marquises had returned. They gathered together and waited quietly. In front, Xia Qi looked at Hong Yi, who stood up in front of the tomb. Marquis Kong Yu, Marquis Anling, Zhangsun Yunxian, and the 3 new marquises all bowed respectfully. Of the previous generation of Marquis of Great Xia, only Zhi Ming was left. He was the only protector of Great Xia after the war of sending off the gods. He deserved their respect. Now is your era. The future of the Grand Xia will depend on you to protect it. Don't disgrace the glory of the Marquis, said Ning Chen calmly. Yes, the 6 replied respectfully. Master. Xia Qi stepped forward, his eyes filled with reluctance. Ning Chen looked at the little prince who had already grown up and said with a calm expression, as the emperor, your every word and action is related to the rise and fall of the entire dynasty. You have grown up and have to learn to take responsibility. Everyone has their own path. Master has done his duty in the Xia dynasty. In the future, you can only rely on your own efforts. Remember, don't go against your original intentions and treat the world well. Xia Qi silently memorized every word in his heart. A moment later, he said softly, Master, is it right or wrong to start a war for Great Xia? Ning Chen sighed softly and said, do you think it was right or wrong for Fan Lingyue to attack Xia in order to bring Northern Meng out of the barren north? Wrong, said Xia Qi quietly. Right and wrong, most of the time, it depends on one's standpoint and one's heart. Fan Lingyue has always hoped for peace and prosperity in the world. I once asked her if her world included Grand Xia, and she said of course. I have never doubted her words. Even before she said those words, millions of people in Yangue City had just been slaughtered. Speaking up to here, Ning Chen looked at the 6 marquis and calmly said, ideals, methods, and reality, how to balance them is your problem. War is definitely wrong, regardless of the reason, victory or defeat, the people will always suffer. However, in this world, war has never stopped. Northern Meng was defeated, and Fan Lingyue used her life to pay for the sins of the world. If you really think it is necessary to start a war, then you must have the courage to bear all the consequences and not just put the consequences on others. Thank you for your advice. The 6 bowed again and said respectfully. Master is leaving. We will meet again someday. After saying this, Ning Chen walked out of the imperial tomb and headed west. He was dressed in red under the night, but his footsteps never wavered. Where are you going? Bai Yunlian appeared and asked calmly. The homeland of Western Buddha, Ning Chen answered. Okay, Bai Yunlian answered softly and didn't say anything else. In the heavenly province planet, Chao Tianxi, who had been refining star soul iron day and night, didn't rest anymore. He was a 1-star venerable, and he was willing to do everything for the future of the heavenly province. The vitality and spiritual energy of the heavenly province sacred land had started to dry up, and it was still spreading in all directions. Countless people panicked and looked in the direction of the heavenly province sacred land. They didn't know what the godlike star venerable was planning. In front of the star soul life sea, the sword venerable stood quietly, looking at the restriction set up by the Nether King. This was the heavenly province's last chance. They could only succeed and not fail. The collapsed celestial realm was the only weak point of the Nether King's barrier, and it was also their only hope. As long as they could forge the star's soul-flowing fire, even if the entire heavenly province sacred land was destroyed, it would be worth it. Time passed day after day. In the heavenly province sacred land sealed by Chao Tianxi, a giant creature appeared. It looked like a phoenix, but it wasn't a phoenix, and it looked like a beast, but it wasn't a head. Its huge body occupied more than half of the heavenly province sacred land. Its whole body was black, and there were formations engraved all over it. Its unparalleled pressure was shocking. The star's soul-flowing fire, which was made by gathering the resources of the one-star star, gradually took shape. On the heavenly province planet, many human supremes felt the terrifying pressure from the heavenly province sacred land. They all came to the heavenly province sacred land, hoping to get an explanation. However, only the sword of the sword venerable welcomed them. Before the restriction of the heavenly province sacred land was truly opened, the news that the heavenly province sacred land would be hit by a life-great star couldn't be leaked. Sword Venerable, do you think you can stop everyone by yourself? Venerable Zhenyang of the Pill Tower stepped forward and asked coldly. Why not? The Sword Venerable said calmly. How arrogant! Another human supremacy stepped forward and said in a deep voice. Just as the two sides were about to fight, starlight gathered in the void, and an illusory figure appeared, blocking the two sides. Star Venerable. Everyone bowed respectfully, not daring to act rashly. I know your doubts, but this is a serious matter, and it's impossible for everyone to know. You can choose 3 representatives to enter the heavenly province sacred land, Chao Tianxi said calmly. When the human supremes heard this, they fell silent for a while. They knew very well that they couldn't really barge into the heavenly province sacred land with a star venerable guarding it. Moreover, there was also the ruthless sword venerable here. Although it was difficult to kill him at the Great Completeness realm, it didn't mean that he couldn't be killed. It wasn't difficult to choose 3 representatives. The Pill Tower, Tiande Mountain, and a top sect each sent 1 person to follow the sword venerable into the heavenly province sacred land. The rest of the human supremes waited quietly outside, looking at the mountain-like giant in the heavenly province sacred land from time to time. They couldn't hide the fear in their eyes. Not long after, the human supremes of the Pill Tower, Tiande Mountain, and another sect walked out. They looked at the crowd and sighed. Go back. You will know the answer in a few days. The 3 of us have to stay to help the star venerable complete the star soul-flowing fire, so we won't go with you. Chapter 549. In the homeland of West Buddha, knowing destiny had appeared. In the past 4 years, he had been forced into the sea of demonic wheel by various sects in Central State. He had chased the palanquin into the immortal palace, then went to outer sky, and finally returned to Central State. The palanquin had gone through a cycle, and knowing destiny had followed along for several seasons. Ning Chen was very sure that the woman in the palanquin was Ghost Girl, but he still didn't understand why. Immortal corpses had existed since ancient times, but Ghost Girl hadn't lived for more than 100 years. Ning Chen wanted an answer. There couldn't be 2 ghost girls in the world. There must be a reason that he didn't know. West Buddha was the holy land of Buddhism in the 5 regions. The Light Supreme of Tianfu Mountain, the West Jade Lord of West Jade Mountain, and the Supreme Bodhi of the Central State of the East were all peak human supremes. Including the Demon Buddha of the Demon Temple, there were 4 known Supreme Buddhas in the entire homeland of West Buddha. There was no doubt that West Buddha had fewer human supremes than Central State, but the surviving supremes were almost all at the peak. Their combat power was extremely terrifying, and the difference in strength between the 2 regions was even. In a sense, the homeland of West Buddha was perhaps the most prosperous cultivation ground in the 5 regions. Bai Yunlian didn't like this place because she hated all the bald donkeys. Not long after they arrived in West Buddha, they were lucky enough to meet someone they knew. Or rather, they were unlucky enough to meet someone they knew. Falling Star. Unlike last time, the person being chased this time was the opposite. It was young Master Luo who was in a sorry state. It seemed that he had fled for countless days and thousands of miles. The person chasing after him was a woman in a green shirt. She had a pretty face and a cultivation of the half-martial highness realm. Her eyes were filled with anger, as if they could spit out flames. Seeing this, Ning Chen immediately turned and walked in the opposite direction. Friends were meant to be tricked. He liked tricking others, but he didn't like it when others tricked him. He knew Falling Star's talent and strength better than anyone else. When they were still in the 5 calamities, this guy was already in the 3rd calamity. Now that more than a decade had passed, his cultivation was probably at the peak of the 3rd calamity, or even demigod. With the Starstreak bow in hand, the woman couldn't have chased him to such a sorry state. The only explanation was that this guy had done something guilty and didn't dare to fight back. Knowing destiny. Just as Ning Chen was about to turn and leave, Luo Xingqian's eyes lit up and he called out. Ning Chen heard this and walked even faster. You know each other? Bai Yunlian asked in confusion. I'm not familiar with him. Just pretend you didn't hear him. Let's hurry up and leave, Ning Chen replied. White Cloud nodded doubtfully and stepped forward to follow him. Ji Ming, you ungrateful guy. Have you forgotten who helped you out in Zhongzhou province? Luo Xingqian shouted at the top of his lungs as he dodged the attacks of the woman behind him. This time, no matter how thick-skinned Ning Chen was, he could not pretend that he did not hear anything. He turned around and looked at Luo Xingqian, who was beaten up to the point that he did not dare to fight back. He did not hide the gloating in his eyes as he said, Luo Xingqian. What a coincidence. I didn't see you just now. I'm sorry. Why are you still in a daze? Help me. Luo Xingqian shouted as he retreated dozens of meters. When the green-robed woman saw that Luo Xingqian's helpers had arrived, she immediately became vigilant. Her pair of beautiful eyes stared at the 2 people not far away. She was unusually alert. Miss, I'm not familiar with him. I'm just passing by. You can continue, Ning Chen said without any regard for friendship. Fuck you. Luo Xingqian cursed anxiously. He knew that this guy was unreliable, but he did not expect that he did not even have the intention to pretend. When the green-robed woman heard this, she really believed it. Hence, she started fighting with Luo Xingqian again. 2 weirdos. Ning Chen was delighted. Luo Xingqian was definitely not a good person. Now that there was someone who could restrain him, it was really a great blessing in the world. Ji Ming, weren't you forced into the demonic will see? Why did you come out? Luo Xingqian dodged the woman's palm power and turned his head to ask curiously. It's a long story. I'll tell you when I have time. But you, why are you being hunted down every day? Ning Chen asked casually. It's a long story. If you don't help me, you'll have to collect my corpse, Luo Xingqian said as he dodged the palm power again by a hair's breadth. Don't worry. I'll help you find a good place to bury it, Ning Chen replied, unmoved. I've made a bad friend. Luo Xingqian smiled bitterly. These guys from the Divine Prefecture would not shirk away from big things, but would not do small things. Why was it so difficult to find someone to help him? Let me ask you something. Is there any news about immortal corpses patrolling the Western Buddha homeland? Ning Chen asked. No. Why are you asking about this? Luo Xingqian was confused. This legend was so ancient that it scared people to death. There probably weren't many people who knew about it anymore. I've seen the woman in the palanquin. She looks exactly like the ghost woman, Ning Chen said seriously. When Luo Xingqian heard this, his expression froze. He raised his hand to stop the green-clothed woman's attack and said, Miss Luo, I have something important to discuss with my friend. Can we put aside the grudge between us for a while? We've already fought for so many days. A little while won't make a difference, right? Luo Fu frowned. After thinking for a bit, she nodded in agreement. When Ning Chen saw this, he helplessly shook his head. This is... Luo Xingchen walked up and looked at the woman beside the former. Bai Yunlian, a friend, Ning Chen introduced. Luo Xingchen nodded and didn't ask any more questions. His expression became serious as he said, "Tell me more about the palanquin and the ghost woman." Ning Chen recounted his experiences from Immortal Palace to the Heavenly Manor planet. The only thing he felt was that everything was a mess. He couldn't find the source. Could it be that the ghost woman is the same as you and also cultivates a body dual transformation technique? Luo Xingchen frowned. No, the ghost woman's 3 souls are complete. It can't be a clone, replied Ning Chen. Luo Xingchen sighed. This matter really was bizarre. It wasn't just this matter. From Immortal Palace to Sky Beyond Heaven, there was nothing normal about this brat. If you can't figure it out, then go find the answer yourself. Right, give me some of your source immortal jades, said Luo Xingchen. What are they for? Ning Chen's expression immediately became vigilant. He only had a few pieces, and they were obtained after exhausting himself. This entire time, he hadn't even been willing to use them. What else can they be used for? Of course they're for cultivation. Do you think they can be used for food? Said Luo Xingchen unhappily. You still haven't reached the consummate realm, so what are you using immortal jades for? That's too wasteful. Ning Chen's face was full of unwillingness. I'm stuck at the peak of the 3 calamities, so I wasn't in a rush. But recently, I've taken a fancy to something. Taking it like this is a bit dangerous. Once I reach the half-step exalt realm, it'll be much more reliable, said Luo Xingchen honestly. How many pieces do you want? Asked Ning Chen. 1,000. Luo Xingchen didn't even think about it. Scram. Why don't you want 10,000? Cursed Ning Chen. 800. I can't go any lower. If I can't break through to the half-step exalt realm and something unexpected happens, you really will have to collect my corpse, said Luo Xingchen. 600. Take it or leave it. Ning Chen clenched his teeth. Deal. Luo Xingchen decisively nodded. Ning Chen waved his hand, handing over the mountain of immortal jades with a pained expression. Use it sparingly. If there's anything left, return it to me, said Ning Chen. Don't worry, I'll definitely return the rest. Luo Xingchen waved his hand and put away the immortal jades. Return it? Dream on. One more thing. In these 4 years, have you seen Sword 2, Mu Qianshang, and the others? Asked Ning Chen. I coincidentally saw Sword 2 once. But that guy's brain is fried. He said something about helping his senior sect brother finish his unfinished path. As for the others, I don't know where they ran off to. After the 5 regions merged, these people's martial arts progress was fiercer than the last. A group of madmen. Luo Xingchen said in displeasure. Back then, he had been the one with the highest cultivation. While cultivation and battle power were not equal, the cultivation he was most proud of might not even have an advantage. How could he feel comfortable? The divine lands were restricted too severely back then. It was difficult to even enter the Khanate realm. Now that they are no longer restricted, how can these martial arts geniuses not be excited? Ning Chen said helplessly. Forget about them. I almost forgot. Isn't your main body in the Changling ancient land? Why don't you ask that Changling female supreme? She should know more about the homeland of West Buddha, suggested Luo Xingchen. Makes sense. Ning Chen nodded. He glanced at the woman in green who was still waiting nearby and said, Miss, we have finished discussing our matters. You can continue. Hearing this, Luo Xingchen's expression changed. He did not even say goodbye. He gave the former a middle finger and ran away. Seeing this, the woman in green immediately chased after him. Ning Chen looked at the two's departing figures and gave a blissful smile. Those friends who had entrusted their lives to him back then had all walked their own paths. Luo Xingqian's experience was also bumpy, but he was the most carefree one. He could see that the woman in green he met this time was a simple and kind person. He hoped that he would cherish this hard-won fate. He hoped that all lovers in the world would find their way together. After standing for a long time and waiting for the two figures to disappear, Ning Chen looked at Bai Yunlian and said, "Miss Bai, let's continue on our way." Bai Yunlian nodded. He remembered the young man from before. So they were really friends. The emotions between humans were really complicated and difficult to distinguish. "Why did you not help him?" Bai Yunlian asked softly. "That girl cannot hurt him. Also, he will solve the trouble he caused himself." "If I help him, I will be helping the evildoer," Ning Chen answered. "Are you not friends?" Bai Yunlian asked in puzzlement. "Friends are used to block blades, not to block trouble." "If the one in trouble today was me, that guy may run faster," Ning Chen answered. "I do not understand." Bai Yunlian shook his head and said, "You have stayed in the world for a long time and will slowly understand. In this world, everyone will encounter all kinds of people and matters. Some will add flowers to brocade, some will send charcoal in snowy weather, and some will hit someone when they are down. Like that guy just now. If there is trouble, I will not find him because he will hide faster than anyone else. But if there is a day when my life is in danger, the first to save me will be him, and vice versa," Ning Chen said calmly. Chapter 550. In the homeland of West Buddha, in an area where few dared to enter, two figures appeared and walked over. Humans, Buddhas, and demons were not allowed to enter the Forbidden Land. Those who trespassed would die. Changling was the top sect in this Forbidden Land. It had existed since ancient times and was one of the most mysterious inheritances in the homeland of West Buddha. For hundreds of years, the female supreme rarely appeared in the world. People of Changling rarely stepped out of the Forbidden Land. For such a mysterious and powerful inheritance, no sect in the homeland of West Buddha was willing to provoke it. Ning Chen and Bai Yunlian walked into the Forbidden Land and immediately felt an unusual presence. The death restriction was activated. Undercurrents rose. Killing lights flashed past and threatened to kill the two. The Forbidden Land lives up to its name. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. He formed a sword with his fingers. Supported by phoenix energy, he swung his sword and scattered the undercurrents. Trespassing the Forbidden Land. You will not live. At this moment, the wind and clouds in the 9 heavens changed. A powerful presence descended. In an instant, gray air currents filled the area. The oppressive presence was so heavy that people could not breathe. Supreme. Ning Chen frowned slightly. They were really unlucky. Mo Kuang appeared. His sword was extremely sharp after the second calamity. Mo Kuang met the palm that fell from the sky. With an earth-shaking tremor, Hong Yi took half a step back. His left hand formed a sword and broke through the air. Jiuli Zun flipped his palm and shook the sword finger. The two sides collided. The undercurrents surged endlessly and the dust rose hundreds of feet. Not bad. Jiuli Zun had a strange expression. He retreated and gathered the undercurrents. Just as he was about to start the battle again, light gathered in the void. An illusory figure appeared and stopped the battle. Jiuli, these are my guests. Please let them pass. Jiuli Zun made a sound of surprise. He waved his hand to disperse the undercurrents. He looked at the woman who appeared in the void and said calmly, "Female Chang, when did Changling interact with the Yao?" There is no need for Jiuli Zun to worry about Changling. Come with me, the female supreme said softly. Ning Chen nodded and followed along with Bai Yunlian. Jiuli Zun did not stop her. Looking at the two words, light flashed through his eyes. A top swordsman of the world, a supreme of the Yao, and the Changling female supreme, how much had she hidden? In the ancient lands of Changling, the noble woman came with two people. In a chaotic hall, she sat cross-legged in plain clothes. Formation scripts appeared around her and sped up the passage of time. Did he say anything? Ning Chen asked as he gazed at the main body before him. He was able to discern that the main body had entered into closed-door cultivation, and it would be impossible for the main body to emerge in a short period of time. He said that he will no longer care about the affairs of the mortal world. He will continue to cultivate until he reaches the immortal realm. As for the matter of finding a way to revive the dead, he will leave it to you, the female supreme said softly. Sure. Ning Chen nodded. His demonic body had already stepped onto the demonic path, and his main body was doing his best to ascend to immortality. As for his main body, he would continue on his own path. As long as he could revive the ghost girl, he would try any method. In addition, Miss Ruo Shi has begun to cultivate, the female sovereign said. Ning Chen frowned. How was that possible? Ruo Shi's talent was not as good as his, and she had already missed her best years. It would be difficult for her to embark on the path of cultivation again. It is not an ordinary martial path. Even if she succeeds in learning it, she will not be too strong. However, Miss Ruo Shi does not like fighting. This method suits her. When we meet in the future, it will definitely give you a surprise, the female supreme said calmly. Thank you, female supreme, Ning Chen said seriously. No need. As they spoke, a familiar figure walked in from outside the chaotic hall. Her powerful aura had already reached perfection. Changyu, Ning Chen said in surprise. Wrong, it is the female supreme. The female supreme and the female supreme walked together. For the first time in 100 years, they were one again. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. So, Changyu and the Changling female supreme were the same as him. Ji Ming, how did you get out of the demon will see, the female supreme asked in confusion. I chased after the palanquin. Ning Chen briefly recounted what had happened in the past few years. Originally, he did not plan to return so quickly. There were existences above the supremes in the sky beyond heaven. They might be of help to him in reviving the ghost girl. However, the truth of the immortal corpses was something he urgently wanted to find out. If he missed it, he did not know when he would encounter it again. Female Supreme, you are cultivating two bodies. Are you preparing to break through to the Supremes? Ning Chen asked seriously. Yes. The female Supreme nodded. Ning Chen was silent. With a wave of his hand, Mo Kuang appeared. In the outer heavens, I fought briefly with the heavenly mansion star Venerate, who was above the supremacy level. I managed to remember some of the laws of heaven and earth. I can't help you much, so I'll use this battle as a reward for your help, Ning Chen said. Hearing this, the female Supreme's eyes flashed with a strange light. She slowly said, "Thank you." The two walked out of the chaotic hall. Ning Chen looked at Bai Yunlian, who was quietly waiting not far away, and said softly, "Miss Bai, please help me." Bai Yunlian thought for a moment. With a flip of her hand, a white bead slowly rose from her dantian and flew out of her mouth. "Return it to me after the battle." Bai Yunlian waved her hand and sent the inner core out. Seeing this, Ning Chen and the female Supreme's expressions froze. The inner core of a demon venerable. Humans cultivated the sea of energy, while demons cultivated the inner core. Although they were different in form, their essence was the same. Losing it would destroy their cultivation. The female Supreme sighed inwardly. For tens of thousands of years, the demon race had been declining day by day. It was not without reason. Compared to the unpredictable humans, the hearts of the demon race were much purer. Ning Chen was silent and did not say anything. He originally only wanted to borrow a portion of his demon essence. He did not expect Bai Yunlian to give away her inner core. In the next moment, a phoenix cry sounded. The figure of a phoenix appeared and swallowed the inner core. It spread its wings and its aura rose rapidly. Thunder roared in the sky, but it was disturbed by Changling's array formation and could not descend. Ning Chen stepped forward. The phoenix essence around him merged with the white dragon's demon essence. He raised his hand and the surrounding void collapsed. He had actually reproduced the move of the Heavenly Palace Star Sovereign. Void destruction. Once the words were spoken, the world would cry out in grief. The power was different, but they had similar characteristics. Expanse after expanse of space collapsed, reaching 100 zhang away. In the void of destruction, the female supreme stood still like a mountain. She was seriously experiencing the power of the move. Prison circle. The moment the void was repaired, the laws changed again. Ning Chen used his phoenix essence and demon essence to forcefully control the laws of space and reproduced the prison circle move. The female supreme took a step forward. At this moment, she was trapped in a cage and could not move. 2 moves had passed. Just as Ning Chen was about to activate the last move, he suddenly stumbled. Blood flowed out. The cold aura exploded and attacked the phoenix body. The female supreme's expression changed. She stepped forward and sent her vital essence in to disperse the cold aura. The phoenix body belongs to the fire element and clashes with the cold aura. It cannot be forced. Also, such laws are useless to me. It does not matter if I look or not, the female supreme said softly. Ning Chen nodded tiredly and said, "This is all I can do. Female supreme, I hope you can step on the path to immortality as soon as possible." "Many thanks," the female supreme earnestly said. Due to the limitations of her realm, knowing destiny's laws were still very immature. But to her, it was still a great help. After all, she had already cultivated to the peak of perfection and could see things that knowing destiny could not. It had to be said that although this young man's cultivation talent could not be considered top-notch, his intelligence and comprehension ability were extremely terrifying. Even if he didn't understand, he could still clearly remember everything. "Knowing destiny, I haven't heard any news about the immortal corpses you spoke of. However, according to ancient legends, the immortal palanquin once appeared in the westernmost part of the Western Buddha's homeland. You can go take a look," said the female supreme calmly. Ning Chen nodded in agreement. At the same time, the heavenly mansion planet had been affected by the flowing flame star. The entire sacred land had been turned into a land of death. The once boundless heavenly mansion's sacred land was now covered in withered trees. It was desolate and desolate. Above the sacred land, the mountain-like object's aura became more and more shocking. The celestial body had set up a formation, and runes were engraved on it to increase the power of the divine artifact. Not far away, the sword venerate looked at the flowing flame star that was gradually taking shape. The battle intent in his calm eyes became harder and harder to hide. He knew that once this object was completed, the war would begin. The resources of one star were limited, so the experts of the inner realm wouldn't welcome them. Of course, they were the same. In order to obtain more resources for the heavenly mansion, this war was inevitable. Now, it all depended on whether the star venerate could break the underworld king's boundary between the inner and outer realms. Celestial body, how much longer? Chao Tianqi walked over with a serious expression. 3 months, said Xiao Bieli calmly. Chao Tianqi nodded and looked at the black-clothed man. He slowly said, "Sword venerate, the war is about to begin. You are the sword of the heavenly mansion and the war god of the heavenly mansion. Remember, no matter what, you can't lose." "I understand." The sword venerate nodded. Star venerate. At this moment, the void stirred and the human sovereigns of the 3 large sects appeared. They respectfully bowed. "How did it go?" Chao Tianqi turned around and asked. "Everything is ready. We're just waiting for the flowing flame star to be completed." Venerable Dong Sun stepped forward and answered. Thank you for your hard work, said Chao Tianqi softly. This matter concerns the rise and fall of the heavenly mansion. We're just doing our part, said the human sovereign of the heavenly capital mountain. Venerable Dong Sun, does the pill tower have pills that can help people temporarily improve their cultivation? Chao Tianqi looked over and asked. Venerable Dong Sun frowned and said, with your cultivation as a star venerable and the help of the flowing flame star, you should have at least a 90% chance of breaking the underworld king's boundary in the celestial region. Why should you take the risk of a backlash and use pills to improve your cultivation? When it comes to the underworld king, we can't be too careful. This is the heavenly mansion's only chance. We can't let any accidents happen. Chao Tianqi sighed softly. The pill tower has a fallen immortal pill, which was left behind by the pill tower's first tower master. It can help a human sovereign reach the superior sovereign realm in a short time. However, the side effects are equally terrifying. After 1 hour, the person who consumes it will be crippled. Star venerates are already superior sovereigns. I don't know whether it will cripple their cultivation, but they will at least be severely injured. Please reconsider, Venerable Dong Sun said seriously. Chao Tianqi was silent. After a moment, he slowly said, as long as we can break the underworld king's boundary, it's worth it. Chapter 551. In the West Buddha's homeland, knowing destiny had appeared. This was truly the end of the world. Just like the east of the divine prefecture, everything was desolate. The 5 regions were different from the other planets. This was a world created by the Nether King, and it was surrounded by a sea of chaos. After searching for several days, Ning Chen walked to the end of the world and looked down at the endless chaos. A moment later, he took a step forward. Miss Bai, you should stay. There's no need to take this risk with me, said Ning Chen when he saw that the white flood dragon was about to follow. If there's danger, I'll leave, said Bai Yunlian calmly. Ning Chen didn't say anything else. He stomped his foot and charged down. In the primal chaos, waves of fog rolled. The lower one went, the lower the visibility, and the more difficult it was to go down. After walking for a long time, a 10-meter-tall divine tree appeared in front of them. Chaos gathered around it, and it was sparkling and translucent. It was dark gray and extraordinary. Ning Chen stopped and looked at the divine tree in front of him. A trace of emotion flashed through his eyes. When chaos gathered, everything was possible. Back then, Mu Bai had come to the end of the world to wait for a sword. He had sat there for countless days and nights. Fortunately, Mu Bai had managed to wait until the end, and in the battle with the Nether King, he had obtained his sword. Ning Chen walked forward and waved his hand. Mo Kuang appeared. Just as he was about to disperse the divine tree, a weak consciousness came from the divine tree. It was full of pleading. Oh! Ning Chen felt the fluctuations from the divine tree's consciousness, and his eyes narrowed. The divine tree had its own consciousness. Let it go, said Bai Yunlian softly. Bai Yunlian said softly. It was even more difficult for a soulless object to gain sentience than the demons. This divine tree had lived for at least tens of thousands of years to reach its current state. Ning Chen nodded and waved his hand to put away Mo Kuang. Since it had gained consciousness, he would let it go. Everything had the right to live, and there was no need to kill it. The two of them continued forward, and before long, they disappeared into the chaos. From that day onwards, no one knew the whereabouts of Knowing Destiny and the White Flood Dragon. The 5 regions were still as calm as ever, with turbulent undercurrents. In the homeland of West Buddha, in the Celestial Palace and the Demon Temple, the 2 strongest supreme beings of the mortal world had completely disappeared after being defeated by the legend of Xia Kingdom. In order to avenge their humiliation, they tried their best to break through to the Supreme Being realm. In the ancient land of Changling, New Chang joined together and sealed off Changling. She started to charge for the legendary path of treading immortals. On the Tianfu star, 3 months had passed. The astral soul flowing flame had finally been completed. The sound of war was close at hand. Star Venerable. On the Holy Land, 5 figures half knelt down to see the Star Venerables off. Tian Xiang, Sword Sovereign, starting today, the future of the heavenly manors is in your hands. No matter what, you have to fight for a peaceful place for the people of the heavenly manors, said Chao Tianxi calmly as he looked down at the two of them. Yes. Xiao Bieli and Honorable Sword replied respectfully. Venerable Dongxuan, Venerable Tiandu, and Venerable Arcane, thank you for your help over the past few days. However, this is only the beginning. For the future of Heaven's sanctum, please let go of all past grievances and gather all your strength for the upcoming war, said Chao Tianxi seriously. Yes. The 3 supremes replied. Everyone, I hope there will be a day when we meet again. As he spoke, Chao Tianxi flipped his palm and activated the Holy Land's secret formation. Instantly, the entire heavenly manors shook violently. Countless formation runes rose, and a strange light shone, illuminating thousands of miles. In the next moment, the mountain-like astral soul flowing light rose like a kunpeng, spreading its wings and soaring into the sky. The blazing flowing light flashed through the starry sky and quickly flew towards the broken celestial domain. The celestial domain was less than 10,000 miles away. Chao Tianxi took out the fallen immortal pill given to him by the pill tower and consumed it without hesitation. Ha! With a shout, Chao Tianxi dissolved the medicinal power in his body. His body shone with red light on the starry sky path. He had reached the peak of supremacy. In the blink of an eye, the 5 regions were right in front of him. The peaceful land looked so beautiful under the starry sky. Knowing that his actions would cause the people of the inner realm to suffer, Chao Tianxi's eyes flashed with an apologetic look. However, the future of the heavenly manors was in his hands. There was no turning back. I'm sorry. Under the starry sky, no one heard the inaudible apology. A moment later, Chao Tianxi's expression became firm again. His body was refined to the extreme. Countless formation runes awakened on his astral soul flowing fire. The red light was extremely bright. His 2 bodies flowed together, turning into a divine sun that crashed into the Netherworld King's barrier above the 5 regions. In the broken celestial domain, in the only weak point of the Netherworld King's barrier, a red divine sun fell from the sky. In an instant, heaven and earth collapsed. The entire world quickly fell apart. In the inner realm, the moment the divine sun fell, everyone was terrified. They all looked at the sky, not understanding what was happening. After a moment, the most terrifying scene occurred. The divine sun crashed into the Netherworld King's barrier. The 5 regions shook violently. Mountain floods erupted and tsunamis struck the sky. Huge ravines spread across the 5 regions. Mountains rose from the ground and mountains fell into the sea. In the central region, the southern tomb, the eastern region, the western lands, and the northern plains, countless pairs of eyes opened. The experts of the mortal realm looked at the divine sun that was falling from the sky with unconcealable shock in their eyes. Above honorable. The terrifying pressure was as if the king of hell had come again. In the divine prefecture of the eastern region, tens of millions of people looked at the sky and trembled in fear. The apocalyptic divine tribulation from more than 10 years ago was still vivid in their minds. Could it be that the king of hell had come again? Jiming Marquis, King Haowu, where did you go? The human world is in trouble again. At this moment, everyone in the eastern region knelt on the ground and trembled in prayer. They prayed for the return of Jiming Marquis and that the heroes who sent the gods away in the past would appear again. In the northwest of the imperial city of Xia, in front of Jiangsuan's tomb, Xia Xinyu gently wiped the dust off the tombstone and remained silent. Mother has passed away. Will you still care about the rise and fall of this world? In the heavenly mandate palace, Xia Qi suppressed the shock in his heart and looked to the west. Master, will you come back? At the same time, in the 4 extremes that had long been sealed, under the influence of the terrifying collision, disasters occurred. Wan Fengchen, Meng Xuanji, Wang Yu, and the others looked to the sky with a flash of worry. It had only been more than 10 years since the catastrophe of the Netherworld King. Was there another catastrophe in the Divine Prefecture? Are all my old friends still doing well? Above the 5 regions, the divine sun fell and drowned the celestial realm. The star's soul-flowing fire collapsed and was completely destroyed in this terrifying collision. Streaks of fire fell from the sky like meteors at the end of the world. It was so beautiful that it was intoxicating. The celestial realm dissipated, and the Netherworld King's enchantment also collapsed under this terrifying attack. It turned into starlight and disappeared in the starry sky. The brief moment of brilliance changed everything. Above the 9 heavens, the Netherworld King's enchantment that had protected the world for countless years completely collapsed and became a thing of the past forever. In the Divine Prefecture, in front of the star Soul Life Sea, Xiao Bieli looked at the scene that changed the fate of the 2 stars. After a long time, he said slowly, "Honorable swordsman, activate the Divine Prefecture's resources. Also, tell the world the truth. Prepare to go to war." Understood. Honorable swordsman nodded and turned to leave. 10 days later, the news that the Divine Prefecture was about to be destroyed spread through the various sections. For a time, the world was shocked. The Pill Tower, Heavenly Capital Mountain, and Supreme Mystery Palace, the 3 strongest inheritances of the mortal realm, confirmed this news. There was no longer any doubt, and the entire Divine Prefecture fell into a state of panic. The Divine Prefecture issued an order to the world. 4 human sovereigns appeared, and in addition to the martial god of the Divine Prefecture, the Divine Prefecture's sword sovereign quietly observed the attitude of the various sections. The Pill Tower, Heavenly Capital Mountain, and Supreme Mystery Palace expressed their willingness to obey the Divine Prefecture's orders. The Tianxiang dynasty also expressed their stance. Then, the 7-Sword Mountain, Nightfall Palace, and more inheritances chose to submit. In front of the general situation, no one dared to resist. 10 days later, the human sovereigns of the various sects came to the Divine Prefecture once more and bowed their heads. In the Divine Prefecture, the Tianxiang dynasty set up a formation. The number 1 human sovereign displayed a shocking ability. He used the world as a layout to scale the heavens. "Everyone, let's go. Let's go greet the experts of the Divine Prefecture," said Xiao Bieli calmly as he walked into the formation. Yes. The human sovereigns accepted the order and walked into the formation. In the next moment, the formation flickered and the dozen human sovereigns disappeared. They left the Divine Prefecture. In the central continent of the Inner Realm, one figure after another appeared in the sky. Each of them was a human sovereign. Their terrifying auras merged together, causing the entire central continent to tremble. The Zhao family, Grand White Mansion, Whitefoot Academy, and the other 3 sects all looked up at the sky in shock. "Sword Sovereign," said Xiao Bieli indifferently. When Mu Chang'e heard this, he stepped forward. He waved his hand and an ordinary sword appeared. However, the moment the sword appeared, the winds and clouds of the 9 heavens changed. Thunder rumbled and filled the sky. A world-shocking sword slashed out, accompanied by wind and thunder. The most terrifying sword slashed through the land for thousands of miles, flattening hundreds of rivers. After that sword, Mu Chang'e put away his sword and turned around. "Friends of the Inner Realm, cherish your last moments. In 3 days, the war will officially begin." With that, Xiao Bieli revealed a smile. Light spread out from his body and he disappeared with everyone. The first wave hasn't even subsided when another wave rises. In Whitefoot Academy, Yi Qingqiu sighed. This time, it was a real war. These people were probably just the vanguard. However, even these people were a disaster. Was there anyone in the central continent who could stop that terrifying swordsman? What worried her the most was whether or not that human sovereign was still alive. If he hadn't died in the collision just now, then the 5 regions would truly be in danger. Legend had it that above the human sovereign was the immortal realm. An existence that was half a step into the immortal realm might be very close to the Nether King. The legend of the Grand Xia had entered the Sea of Demonic Wheel. The Marquis Ji Ming, who had once saved the human realm, had most of his cultivation crippled. Now, would a miracle happen in the human realm? At the same time, in the Zhao family's east wing, the young woman in purple looked at the sky in silence. She couldn't stop these people. Perhaps he could in the past, but it was very difficult now. Moreover, she and the other sects had forced him to enter the Sea of Demonic Wheel. Even if he had come out alive, how could he help the human realm that had betrayed him? Chapter 552. Heaven's sanctum had descended, and the 5 regions were in great danger. Sword Venerable Muchanga's sword had shocked the world, and all the supremes were shocked. In Zhongzhou, as the leader of the various sects, the Zhao family, Zhao Yousu, sent a letter to the 3 sects, Bailu Academy, Taibai Mansion, and other major sects, inviting the supremes of the world to discuss the matter of resisting the foreign enemies. The supremes of the 3 sects, Yiqingqiu, and other human supremes arrived as promised. Half a day later, the Taibai Mansion Lord also arrived, holding a pot of wine in his hand. His hair was disheveled, and he looked very dispirited. During the Battle of Guihang Sky Moon Peak, Taibai Prime was utterly defeated, and his Taoist heart was broken. His Taoist sword had never been unsheathed since then. The supremes of the various sects looked at the Taibai Mansion Lord's current appearance and sighed in their hearts. They had all witnessed the battle back then. It was not that Taibai Prime was too weak, but that the legends of the swordsmen of the eastern region were too amazing. That kind of sword was not a sword of the human world. Zhao Yousu glanced at the people in front of her and said calmly, "Everyone, Tianji City has sent news that those people from yesterday are indeed from outer heaven. Moreover, the barrier above the 5 regions has been broken, and there is no longer any barrier between the 5 regions and outer heaven." Hearing this, the supremes of the various sects fell silent. They could not say whether it was fortunate or unfortunate that the barrier of the 5 regions had been broken, and their freedom was no longer restricted, and they could leave at any time. However, this also indicated that the strong cultivators of outer heaven could come to the 5 regions at any time. The war is about to begin. "Everyone, I need you to make a clear statement," Zhao Yousu said seriously. "Have the supremes of the other 4 regions responded?" Bu Chuanxiu, the leader of the 3 sects, asked. "The supremes of Nanling, Beiyuan, and Shitu have already stated that they will rush over as soon as possible. However, after the divine prefecture of the eastern region went through the great tribulation of Hades, the number of strong cultivators has decreased greatly, and it is very likely that they will not be able to participate this time," Zhao Yousu replied. "There is no problem with the alliance, but who will be at the helm?" Another supremacy of the 3 sects, Li Shaoran, asked the question. "Everyone, please choose," Zhao Yousu said lightly. "It's not that simple. This time, not only Zhongzhou, but also the other regions will have supremes. It will be difficult to choose a leader who will be trusted by everyone," Yiqingqiu said calmly. "The strong are respected," the lord of Taibai Prefecture, who had been silent all this time, said in a hoarse voice after taking a sip of wine. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. This was the simplest reason, but it was also the most convincing method. Among everyone present, Miss Liusu and the Manor Lord are the strongest. I don't think anyone can deny this. Before the experts from the other 4 regions arrive, the position of alliance head should be chosen from one of the 2, said Yiqingqiu calmly. "Ha, alliance master." The Taibai Prefecture Lord drank the wine in the pot, stood up, and walked outside. He said, "I'm going to get some wine. I'll come back later." After the chief of Taibai Prefecture left, everyone shifted their gazes to Zhao Yousu. It was undeniable that although this woman was young, her strength had already reached the pinnacle of the human world. She was the most suitable person to be the representative of the central state. Does anyone have any objections to Miss Liusu temporarily acting as the alliance leader? Yi Qingqiu asked. No, said Bu Chuanqiu, the leader of the three sections. Ji Qiuyu and Li Shaoran also voiced their agreement. Whitefoot Academy's three sects expressed their stance, and the other sect's supreme beings didn't hesitate either, agreeing to this result. I won't decline the position of alliance head, but there's one more thing. As she spoke, Zhao Liusu looked at everyone present and said slowly, war is not something that can be decided by simple force. Judging the timing, scheduling, and arranging the troops are also the key. Everyone, is there anyone who would recommend the military counselor? Hearing this, Yi Qingqiu and the others fell silent again. In terms of combat strength, they were the strongest in the human world, but arranging troops, and scheming were not their strengths. We can choose a military advisor from the human world's imperial court who is good at this, suggested Li Shaoran. No, experience and knowledge determine one's height. We can't give such an important position to an ordinary person who doesn't even understand the combat strength of a supreme being, said Bu Chuanqiu flatly. Venerable Chuanqiu's words are reasonable. If we make a wrong assessment of combat strength, it's very likely that we'll be doomed eternally. This person must be chosen carefully, said a supreme being from a great sect seriously. Since we can't choose one, let's put this matter aside for now. There's one more thing. Who can stop that swordsman from sky beyond heaven? Asked Zhao Liusu. Everyone fell silent. Right now, this was the most worrying matter. Absolute strength could change the direction of the war. If they couldn't stop that swordsman, they would be in a very passive position. I'll do it. As he spoke, a white-robed Buddha walked over from the distance. After a few steps, he was in front of everyone. His black and white hair was dazzling, and he was both a Buddha and a devil. Supreme Bodhi. Everyone present recognized the Buddha walking over. While they were surprised, they could not help but feel shocked. Could the Buddha in front of them still be called a Buddha? Venerable, are you confident? Asked Yi Qingqiu worriedly. Ba. I'll do my best, replied Bodhi. Zhao Liusu thought for a moment, then said, the first battle can only be won. It'll be difficult for the master to stop that swordsman alone. Venerable Chuanqiu, work with the master to stop him. All right. Bu Chuanqiu nodded. Also, that blue-robed man from yesterday is clearly their leader. Once the battle begins, kill him with all your might, said Zhao Liusu. Understood. The crowd acknowledged the order. While the Central Plains sects were discussing how to resist the enemy, in the far west of the West Plains, two figures were constantly moving forward, searching for traces of the palanquin. Something might have happened in the human world, said Bai Yunlian softly. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and replied indifferently, yet his footsteps didn't stop in the slightest as he continued forward. Bai Yunlian didn't say anything else. She knew a bit about his past. Now, it seemed that he really wouldn't interfere this time. After walking for an unknown number of days, their surroundings still hadn't changed. As far as the eye could see, all they could see was a gray, chaotic fog. Behind them, the continent was gradually disappearing. The 5 regions, which were different from ordinary planets, seemed to have been lifted up by the chaos and floated in the starry sky. Seeing the young man's stubborn yet calm face, Bai Yunlian was even more confused. Don't you regret giving up your life? This is my life, said Ning Chen calmly. Human emotions are really complicated and difficult to understand. Bai Yunlian sighed. Miss Bai, you've been cultivating for thousands of years. What's the result? Asked Ning Chen. Becoming an immortal. Bai Yunlian nodded. Why? Asked Ning Chen again. Bai Yunlian was startled. No reason. This is your life. You and I just chose different paths. Actually, it's not that complicated, right? Said Ning Chen with a smile. Bai Yunlian nodded thoughtfully. Maybe she was thinking too much. After walking for another half a day, Ning Chen suddenly stopped. He looked at something blurry in the distance and narrowed his eyes. "Miss Bai, can you see what that is?" asked Ning Chen. "It seems to be a green coffin," said Bai Yunlian softly with a strange light in her eyes. Hearing this, Ning Chen moved his feet and quickly rushed forward. Bai Yunlian followed behind. She didn't understand why there was a coffin here. Ning Chen arrived in front of the green coffin. Suddenly, the surrounding ghostly chi surged. An immortal palanquin flew out of the primal chaos. The ghostly woman appeared and struck out with her palm. Ning Chen hastily retreated and summoned the green cauldron to block. With a loud bang, the primal chaos scattered and blood dyed the green cauldron red. Bai Yunlian was startled. She immediately brought Ning Chen 1,000 feet away from the green coffin. "How are you?" asked Bai Yunlian solemnly. "I'm fine." Ning Chen suppressed the injuries in his body and looked at the green coffin in front of him. A threatening light flashed in his eyes. The truth should be in that coffin. This wasn't the first time he had come into contact with the immortal palanquin. They had met several times, but the ghostly woman had never attacked him. Only this time, before he even touched the coffin, the ghostly woman had displayed shocking killing intent. His cauldron. In front of the green coffin, the ghostly woman looked at the green cauldron and took a step forward. Seeing this, Ning Chen's figure flickered and he quickly put away the green cauldron. "Who are you?" Ghost Girl looked at the person before her and asked softly. "Ning Chen," said Ning Chen. "Ning Chen," muttered the ghostly woman. She shook her head and said, "No, it's not him." The immortal palanquin rang, and ghostly chi filled the air. The green coffin and the palanquin disappeared at the same time. Ning Chen's expression became anxious, and he immediately went forward to chase after them. However, he once again lost the direction. "It's not him," the voice echoed in the primal chaos. No one knew what it meant, and it was puzzling. In the boundless primal chaos, only Hong Yi remained. She stood there, feeling very lonely. In the distance, Bai Yunlian looked at the figure in the primal chaos and sighed. Was there really an end to the path he was walking? In front of the life sea of the heavenly sanctum, Xiao Bieli looked at the 5 regions in the distance. He stood there for 2 days and 2 nights. Mu Chang'e walked over and asked, "Tian Xiang, have you found any traces of the star venerate?" "No, but with the star venerate's ability, it won't be so easy for something to happen. We just need to quickly win this war and wait for the star venerate to return," said Xiao Bieli calmly. "According to my last observation, the number of sovereigns in the inner realm is about the same as the heavenly sanctum. Without the star venerate, this war won't be easy," said Mu Chang'e seriously. "A comparison of strength on paper is the most useless." "That sword strike I had you use wasn't just a greeting," said Xiao Bieli slowly. Mu Chang'e frowned and asked, "What do you mean?" "Throwing a brick to destroy jade," replied Xiao Bieli. Mu Chang'e narrowed his eyes and said, "Tian Xiang wants to use me as bait to lure the sovereigns of the inner realm into a trap. However, this matter isn't simple. The sovereigns of the inner realm are definitely strong." "Strong? How strong are they?" Xiao Bieli smiled coldly. "Are they stronger than Tian Xiang?" Mu Chang'e fell silent and didn't ask any more questions. Wasn't the reason they dared to start this war because of Tian Xiang's existence? The heavenly sanctum's minister might not be as strong as Xiao Bieli, but on the heavenly sanctum planet, aside from the star venerate, the person that the various factions feared the most was Tian Xiang, not martial god. Chapter 553. Central Continent, Guihang Sky Moon Peak, the place where the Eastern Region's swordsmen had fought the Tai Bai School's chief. Today, a figure walked out of the void. This person was the current leader of the Tianfu planet, the Minister of Heaven, Xiao Bieli. First formation, Sword Sovereign opens the path and slaughters the world. A yellow scroll appeared in Xiao Bieli's hand. The moment he opened it, a black figure descended from the sky. Sword Sovereign had appeared in the 5 regions. He's here. In Central Continent, many pairs of eyes looked at the sky. 3 days had passed, and the thing they didn't want to happen the most had finally happened. Ba. A Buddhist chant was heard, and rain fell. Bodhi in a white robe walked into the sky and blocked the Tianfu Sword Sovereign. At the same time, a halberd shot into the sky like a dragon. The 3 leaders of the 3 sects, Chuanxiu, and the Buddhists, blocked the path of the swordsman. Just the 2 of you. Mu Chang'e waved his hand and an ancient mottled sword came out of its sheath. In an instant, wind and thunder filled the sky. As expected, the swordsman is the opponent I hate the most. Bu Chuanxiu snorted coldly. He took a step forward and his halberd met the swordsman's attack. Too weak. Mu Chang'e waved his sword and lightning gathered. The moment the sword and halberd clashed, endless lightning surged and engulfed the halberd. With a bang, Bu Chuanxiu retreated a few steps. His mouth was red. Just one move had injured him. Buddha is merciful. Seeing that the situation was unfavorable, Bodhi raised his prayer beads. Buddhist light shone brightly, and the Buddhist world opened. First sword, Buddha. With the Buddha world trapped, Mu Chang'e's expression didn't change in the slightest. He took a step forward and the momentum of the heavenly fault sword in his hand changed. A pagoda appeared behind him and a 100-story pagoda broke through the clouds. The phenomenon of the sword shook the world. With a slash of the sword, heaven and earth were destroyed. The Buddhist world shattered, and a Buddhist palm shook the heavens. Blood splattered and dyed the Buddhist robe red. Bodhi heart meditation, complete tomorrow's chant. After losing, Bodhi gathered his Buddhist energy again. Immediately, rain fell, and Buddhist chants filled the sky. The swordsman's divine might was trapped. How can a half-demonized Buddha block me, third sword, and yellow springs? Mu Chang'e took a step forward, and the aura of the yellow springs surged out from his body. Raging waves of the yellow springs rose from his sword, and in an instant, the yellow springs fell into the world, drowning out the sound of Buddha. As the aura of the yellow springs entered his body, Bodhi let out a muffled groan. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. The Buddhist and demonic powers were in a balance, making it difficult for him to gather his full strength. Clang! The halberd arrived again. Bu Chunqiu tried his best to help, but Mu Chang'e used Ting Tian Ke again and again to slash at the halberd. Too weak, too weak. Is this all you have? Or is this the only strength the inner realm has? Although he tried his best to restrain himself, he was unable to. Mu Chang'e grew more and more disappointed. The swordsman's sword danced faster and faster, becoming colder and colder. Pang! Bu Chunqiu's sword broke the halberd, and a terrifying wound appeared on his left arm. Blood splashed everywhere. It was a beautiful scene. When Bodhi saw this, he suppressed his injuries and stepped forward. He blocked the swordsman's sword with a flip of his palm, barely saving Reverend Chunqiu. Ji Qiuyu, Li Shaoran, the 2 of you go and help them, said Zhao Yousu from afar. Yes. The 2 martial highnesses accepted the order and dashed into the battlefield in a flash. The 4 of them had joined forces to stop the Tianfu war god. On the grand sky moon peak, Xiao Libi's lips curled into a cold smile. The bait had worked. The second formation, the 5 sovereigns, luring the tiger away from the mountain. The scroll was opened again. In the distant battlefield, the void swirled and 5 powerful auras appeared again. They didn't help the Tianfu warlord but dashed toward the sects outside the battlefield. Oh! On the other side of the battlefield, Zhao Yousu narrowed her eyes. Were the people of Sky Beyond Heaven really that confident in the swordsman? This was the inner realm. They wouldn't lose to anyone in terms of the number of sovereigns. Xianzhen, Mu Hua, Qi Wei, Yusheng, Qingyu, it's your turn. Zhao Liusu calmly looked at the 5 sovereigns from the other 3 regions. Yes. The 5 sovereigns received the order and chased after the heavenly palace's sovereigns. Thousands of miles away, the 2 sovereigns clashed once more. The shockwaves shook heaven and earth. Even thousands of miles away, they could clearly feel it. The 2 battles began at the same time. The intense confrontation represented the 2 sovereigns' will to fight. The third formation, Dong Sun, Tian Du, and Tai Xian, Huang Quan. Gui Hong Tian, Yu Feng, and Xiao Bieli spoke for the 3rd time. Instantly, in the distant battlefield, Dong Sun, Tian Du, and Tai Xian appeared. The tripartite formation that had been prepared for a long time was activated. An endless torrent of energy spiraled up around Subhuti and the others, completely separating them from the battlefield. Bailey, Li Shan, Hong Lu, you 3 go break the formation, said Zhao Liusu. Yes. The 3 sovereigns of the central continent accepted the order and stepped into the battlefield. 12 sovereigns. Within the tripartite formation, Mu Chang'e fought 4 sovereigns with 1 sword. At the same time, he watched the situation change. 12 sovereigns had appeared in the inner realm. They were about to reach their limit. The 4th formation used Tian Xiang as bait. Split up and lure the enemy. Guihong Tian's tripartite formation rose again. Tian Xiang's aura erupted like a firefly in the night. It was so dazzling. Found it. At the back of the battlefield, gazes looked at Guihong Tian's tripartite formation. To capture bandits, capture the leader. This was the eternal law of war. Taibai Prefecture Lord, it's your turn. Zhao Liusu glanced at Taibai Prefecture Lord, who was drinking silently beside her. Lord Alliance Lord, look at me now. Can I still fight? Taibai Prefecture Lord drank a mouthful of wine and said casually. So what if you lose once? Who can remain undefeated for their entire life? As a sovereign, can't you even overcome this little setback? Said Zhao Liusu coldly. Taibai Prefecture Lord was silent. After a moment, he sighed and said, I'll try my best. However, you don't have to put too much hope in me. I'm not much stronger than a cripple right now. After saying that, Taibai Prefecture Lord's figure disappeared. He quickly flew towards Guihong Tian's tripartite formation. On the scattered battlefield, there were many opportunities. The most crucial one was Guihong Tian's tripartite formation. Taibai Prefecture Lord appeared and slapped his palm down. Oh. It's just you. Xiao Bieli flipped his palm and blocked the attack. I didn't expect the leader of Sky Beyond Heaven to be so ordinary. Taibai Prefecture Lord retreated 10 steps and drank another mouthful of wine. Is that so? Xiao Bieli sneered. He waved his hand, and a purple sword fell from the sky. In the next moment, his body moved, and his sword slashed out. Taibai Prefecture Lord used Yuan Qi to block the attack. With a bang, he retreated 10 steps. A drop of blood dripped from his palm. A drunkard who has lost his martial soul. It seems like the inner world's forces are really exhausted, said Xiao Bieli calmly. Perhaps. Taibai Prefecture Lord didn't care. Then he rushed forward again and attacked Xiao Bieli with a palm. Xiao Bieli waved his sword and blocked the palm. His battle strength was ordinary, and there was nothing special about it. Just at this moment, Zhao Liusu drew her dark moon bow. In an instant, dark waves gathered from all directions. A black arrow pierced through the sky and shot towards Guihong Tian's tripartite formation. Just now, I was wondering how you could kill me since you've exhausted your forces. Now, I know that you've lost this round. Xiao Bieli stabbed his sword into the ground. Immediately, an endless stream of swords soared into the sky. The terrifying might shocked everyone. 4th sword, River of Forgetfulness. At the same time, the 2 sides used the same sword move. Tian Xiang and Sword Sovereign both used the River of Forgetfulness. The formation activated, and Tian Xiang disappeared. When he reappeared, he was beside Sword Sovereign. The same sword roared out. The three sovereigns and Bodhi were shocked. They wanted to retreat, but they couldn't escape. The sword flowed through the cracks. The four supreme beings blocked the attack, but they only saw residual red light that filled the sky. Two supreme beings fell, their souls scattered. Qiu Yu, Xiao Ran, Bu Chuanqiu was filled with grief. He let out a muffled groan as the sword pierced through his body. Blood spurted out. In this moment of crisis, Bodhi no longer suppressed his devilish qi. He pushed his Buddhist qi to the limit and used another Buddhist holy move. Bodhi heart meditation, Bodhi with a thought. The swastika spread, and Buddhist light illuminated the world. The tripartite formation was immediately shaken, and a flaw appeared. Bodhi quickly brought the heavily injured Bu Chuanqiu out of the battlefield. Sword Sovereign, their leader has appeared. In the final round, we'll capture the leader, said Xiao Bieli indifferently. Yes. Mu Chang'e accepted the order and shot towards where the arrow had come from. Within the tripartite formation, Bai Li, Li Shan, and Hong Lu's roles changed. The Tianfu stars Dongxuan, Tian Du, and Taishian sovereigns blocked them. At the back of the battlefield, Zhao Yosu's arrow missed. She immediately prepared to move, but it was already too late. Sword Sovereign's sword descended from the sky. This shocking sword was so powerful that it made people's hearts tremble. Zhao Yosu gathered the soul energy of 9 generations of chosen, and the 9 wheels appeared once more. The imperial heavenly sword slashed through the 9 wheels. Zhao Yosu was forced back several steps, blood flowing out of the corner of her mouth. The sword was the only one, unrivaled in the world. The 5 regions' miserable defeat was close at hand. Just at this moment of crisis, a silver divine spear appeared in the distance. Boundless Buddhist energy was no weaker than a chosen's. Mu Chang'e frowned and waved his sword to knock aside the divine spear. 2 women appeared in front of him. One wore Buddhist robes and was as calm as water. The other wore azure robes and was as beautiful as a painting. Friends from the outer heavens, rashly starting a war will only cause misery and suffering. Please retreat, said Bai Lingling softly. To the side, Qing Ning walked over to the divine spear and pulled it out. Regretfully, her master's Buddhist energy could only be used once. But to save one person, it was worth it. If you want to negotiate, you need to have the appropriate strength. The 2 of you are too weak. The void rippled, and Tian Xiang walked out. If they aren't enough, then what if you add me? As he spoke, the winds and clouds in the 9 heavens changed. Boundless sword currents fell like rain, slashing apart many battles. White clothes descended from the sky. His extraordinarily cold face was covered in the hardships of time. The Yaoguang dynasty's century-old sword god descended once more. It's you. Mu Chang'e narrowed his eyes. The Alcade King glanced at his juniors, and a trace of gratification flashed through his eyes. He calmly said, "You've already done well. Leave the rest to me." Chapter 554. The situation was dangerous. The Alcade monarch had returned, and the Alcade dynasty's sword god had appeared. One was the Tianfu war god and the other was the Central Continent sword god. Both of their swords were unique. Sword intent rose, shaking heaven and earth. Monarchs met monarchs, the peak was unique, and they couldn't coexist. Shocking sword intent soared into the heavens. One move will end today's battle, said Mu Chang'e calmly. Please. The Alcade monarch turned to the side. Xiao Bieli, Zhao Yosu, and the others immediately retreated a few hundred meters, leaving the battlefield to the 2 of them. Sword 5. Mu Changa's fingers swiped across his sword, and a dark sword current revolved around him. Boundless sword intent pierced through the heavens, shaking heaven and earth. This shocking battle began in the mortal realm. Inexorable. The sword's path to the Yellow Springs, the bridge of inexorable. The most terrifying sword slashed open hell, and the surging sword pressure destroyed everything in the surroundings. The ground within 100 miles collapsed and collapsed. Facing the same sword technique, the Alcade monarch's expression became even calmer. He clenched his hand, and an ordinary sword flew over. Sword tribulation, endless. 10,000 sword tribulations, endless and endless. The ordinary sword dissipated, transforming into a wave of swords that defied the heavens. Within the endless darkness, it formed its own pattern. A sword that had reached the peak of perfection, a sword that had returned to its original state. This was the first time they met. In an instant, a shocking collision occurred. Dust and sand roared, and everyone outside the battle was forced back several meters. They barely managed to stabilize themselves. After one sword, the bridge of inexorable broke, and the sword tribulation dissipated. The duel moves were actually evenly matched. No victor could be decided. Retreat. When Tian Xiang saw this, he didn't hesitate at all and immediately gave the order to retreat. The heavenly sanctum's sovereigns immediately withdrew, no longer fighting. Their figures faded and disappeared from the world. The Alcade monarch didn't stop them. After today's battle, the 5 regions' decline was irreversible. Continuing to fight would only increase the number of casualties. Retreat, said the Alcade monarch as he looked at the purple-robed girl. Zhao Yosu nodded and ordered the sovereigns to retreat. Your disciples of the western Jade Mountain? Asked the Alcade monarch as he looked at Bai Lingling and Qing Ning. Yes. Bai Lingling nodded. Is your master doing well? The Alcade king's eyes flashed with emotion as he asked. I'm well, master, Bai Lingling replied. The Alcade king didn't ask any more questions. He calmly said, these people are from the heavenly palace star of the outer heavens. I can help you block the sword saint, but do you have a sage who can contend against the celestial phenomenon? Zhao Yosu was silent. After a long time, she said, there is one person, but the grudge is too deep. He won't be coming. Who? Alcade king asked. Great Xia Jiming Marquis, Zhao Yosu said honestly. The Alcade king narrowed his eyes and said, he's back. Yes. Zhao Yosu nodded and said, I've been back for a long time. Where is he now? Alcade king asked seriously. I don't know, but if we ask Tianji City for help, we should be able to find it, replied Zhao Yosu. Send someone to invite him as soon as possible, said the Alcade king. It's useless. At this moment, Qing Ning, who had been silent all this while, spoke softly, the only person in this world who can change his mind has already passed away. Now, it's futile no matter who tries to invite him. Miss knows him? Asked the Alcade king. Family, said Qing Ning calmly. The Alcade king looked at her for a long time and sighed. Send someone to invite him. Say that I'm about to enter the sovereign realm. Invite him to come watch the ceremony. On the heavenly palace star, the various sovereigns had returned. Fan Xinghong, who had been waiting, immediately went up when she saw the celestial phenomenon return. Celestial phenomenon, what was the result of the battle? Our goal has been achieved. Xiao Bieli indifferently said, the first round is over. Next will be the true invasion. In this battle, 2 of the inner realm's human sovereigns had died and 1 was crippled. It was a pity that they weren't able to defeat the inner realm's sovereigns in one fell swoop. However, through this battle, he was able to determine the bottom line of the inner realm's military strength and the depth of their leader's strategy. This was already enough. The law of war was to know yourself and know your enemy. Heaven's Mansion had obtained the result they wanted. That white-robed swordsman would be a big hindrance, but he would only be a hindrance. Sword Saint, you are the heavenly palace's war god. No matter what, you can't lose to anyone, said Xiao Bieli calmly. I understand. Mu Chang'e nodded and replied. Xinghong, inform the various sects to gather their forces. In 15 days, we'll gather at the sacred land. Xiao Bieli looked at the girl beside him and ordered. Yes. Fan Xinghong respectfully accepted the order. After giving the order, Xiao Bieli walked towards the astral soul life sea in the depths of the sacred land. The star Venerate hadn't returned yet, so he must have been heavily injured. He needed to find the star Venerate's whereabouts as soon as possible. Once the star Venerate returned, this battle would be over. Central Continent, Alcade Dynasty, Sunset Divine City. The Alcade King's return shook the dynasty. In the city, the white-robed Alcade King stood quietly and looked into the distance. In 10 days, he would enter the sovereign realm and become a knowing destiny state. It was up to him whether he would come or not. In Tianji City, 7 youths divined day and night, constantly searching for traces of knowing destiny state. Not far away, many human sovereigns stood quietly with complicated looks in their eyes. The 5 regions had already lost the first round of this battle. Apart from the powerful sword Venerate, their biggest threat was the Heaven Minister. Now, they were in urgent need of a strategist who was good at commanding troops. The Alliance Venerate, Dean Bai Lu, and even the Alcade King had expressed that this person would be none other than the Eastern region's Jiming Marquis. However, would he come? I saw it. At this moment, one of the youths spoke softly. In the far west of the Western Buddha's homeland. Hearing this, Zhao Liusu immediately ordered, Mu Huazuan, you're the most familiar with the Western Buddha's homeland. Please go back and invite the Jiming Marquis. Remember, don't mention anything about the heavens beyond heavens. Just say that the Alcade King is about to ascend to the position of sovereign and invite him to attend the ceremony. Yes. Mu Huazuan accepted the order and turned around, walking into the Dragon Gate and disappearing. In the far west of the western region, Ning Chen and Bai Jiao walked out of the chaotic fog sea and looked at the changes in the world. The barrier is broken. Bai Yunlian's eyes shone as he said softly. Oh. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. If that was the case, then the tremor a few days ago was because something had broken the Underworld King's barrier. After thinking for a moment, Ning Chen said, let's go to the demonic we'll see. Why are we going there? Asked Bai Yunlian. There are some things that can't be found in the inner world. One of us needs to go to the heavens beyond heavens, said Ning Chen calmly. Your demonic body? Asked Bai Yunlian with a frown. Yes. Ning Chen nodded. The demonic body is gloomy and changeable. Do you trust him? Asked Bai Yunlian. I don't trust other things, but when it comes to reviving the ghost girl, there's no doubt about it. Have you decided whether you want to go or him? Asked Bai Yunlian. No. The demonic body swallowed Xian Luo's cultivation body. I don't know if it has completely refined it. If he can't leave the underground palace, then I'll go to the heavens beyond heavens, said Ning Chen calmly. The Jiming Marquis. Just as the two of them were talking, the Dragon Gate appeared in the sky. A powerful aura walked out. It was actually a human sovereign. Bai Yunlian's expression became serious. He secretly gathered his beast essence, ready to attack at any moment. Miss Bai, don't worry. This sovereign shouldn't have any bad intentions. Ning Chen took a step forward and blocked Bai Yunlian's path. The Grand Xia's knowledge Marquis is truly extraordinary, said Mu Huazuan seriously. You're too polite. May I ask why you've come? Asked Ning Chen with a smile. In 9 days, King Yao Guang will become a human sovereign in the Sunset Divine City. He specially invited you to come and watch the ceremony, said Mu Huazuan. Oh. Senior Yao Guang has returned. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed as he asked. He's been back for a few days, replied Mu Huazuan. Please go back and tell Senior Yao Guang that Knowledge Destiny will definitely be there on time, said Ning Chen calmly. We respectfully await your arrival. Mu Huazuan turned and walked into the Dragon Gate. Be careful of traps, warned Bai Yunlian. Ha! Ning Chen smiled and said, Miss Bai, you've been in the human realm for a long time. You seem to be more familiar with human nature. Is there really a problem? Asked Bai Yunlian. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and smiled, that person's attitude is too polite. Sovereigns have their pride. There are only two possibilities for today's situation. First, he has a favor to ask of me in the future. Second, he has bad intentions. Simply put, he's hiding a knife behind a smile. Just like what you're doing now? Asked Bai Yunlian indifferently. Ha! Ning Chen smiled again and said, wrong. It's just a habit of mine. Smiling is always the best way to make people let down their guard. If you wear a mask for too long, you'll need time to take it off. Where are we going now? Asked Bai Yunlian. He didn't want to dwell on this topic anymore. The plan remains the same. First, we'll go to the demonic Will Sea and then the Sunset Divine City. There's no rush, said Ning Chen. The two went on their way again. They sped up a lot and soon disappeared without a trace. Two people appeared in front of the demonic Will Sea in the southwest of the central continent. Ning Chen looked at the girl beside him and said seriously, Miss Bai, you can stay here. The demonic Will Sea is too dangerous. Moreover, the demonic body is unpredictable. I can't guarantee that he won't attack you when we meet. Bai Yunlian frowned and said, then be careful. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and didn't say anything else. He walked towards the demonic Will Sea. In an instant, a black light rose and covered the red-clothed man. After a few breaths, no trace of him could be seen anymore. In the depths of the demonic Will Sea, in an ancient and majestic palace, a black-clothed and black-haired figure sat cross-legged. Demonic chi surged around him. Drops of blood flowed out from the corners of the demonic body's mouth. His cultivation kept rising. In just a few years, he was already infinitely close to the sovereign realm. Ugh! Suddenly, the demonic body opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of blood, dyeing the blue stone in front of him red. Demonic tribulation. The demonic body was facing a tribulation. He was not a human, not a monster, not a celestial body. He had condensed millions of murderous auras and half of Xian Luo's murderous body. However, before reaching the sovereign realm, he couldn't avoid this most terrifying tribulation. Chapter 555. In the underground palace, Sha Ti encountered demonic tribulation. Specks of blood flowed out from the corners of his lips, dyeing his clothes red. In front of the Supreme Being, there was an unavoidable tribulation. Karma was reincarnated, and millions of deaths would eventually be repaid by the Knowing Destiny state. In the past, in order to save people, Knowing Destiny, Fan Tingyue combined the moon and light, slaughtering the world. He used the resentment of the masses to suppress the god of hell's art. However, the masses who were sacrificed were not guilty. Fan Lingyue gave up the last of his soul to return to the world. Knowing his destiny, he survived. With the karma of killing on his body, every step he took was arduous. Through thousands of disasters and tribulations, he repaid the lives of all living beings. The dripping blood was the wrath of the heavens for not allowing sinners to move forward. Good and evil had their retribution, so how could the sinner's body be perfect? Demon body. At this moment, a red shadow flashed past and stopped in front of the devil. She turned her palm and condensed her chi. Vigorous phoenix origin continuously flowed into the devil's body to help him suppress his injuries. After a long time, Ning Chen withdrew his hand. He looked at the demonic body in front of him and said with a heavy expression, "You've entered tribulation." "It's fine." The demon stood up and lightly said, "Why did you come here?" The Nether King realm has been broken, so there is no longer any barrier between the inner realm and outer realm. I came here to discuss with you which one of us will go to outer realm to search for the Jade Lake, Ningchen replied. Jade Lake's water. Why? The demonic body frowned and asked. I found the undying peach tree in Immortal Palace, but it needs to be watered by the Jade Pool's water to revive it, Ningchen replied. The demon body's eyes lit up. It said, do you have any clues? No. Ningchen shook his head and said, I've already searched the Western Buddha, the Eastern Domain, the Central Continent, the Southern Wasteland, and the Heaven's Mansion star in the sky beyond heaven. There's no news about the Jade Lake. I haven't searched the Northern Plains for now. However, if the Jade Lake really exists in this world, then it's most likely in the sky beyond heaven. I need to know the specifics of the situation, said the demon body. Let's go. Let's leave this place first. You're trapped in the demonic tribulation and your cultivation base is unstable. You might be in danger at any moment. Why don't you leave with me? Ningchen suggested. Yes. The demonic body nodded in agreement. In the next moment, the two bodies merged, and the demon phoenix became one. Just like 4 years ago, they came together, and 4 years later, they left together. Outside the demonic will see, Ningchen walked out. Bai Yunlian stepped forward and asked, how was it? Let's go to the Sunset Divine City. We'll talk about other things on the way, said Ningchen. Bai Yunlian nodded and followed him. The Alcade Empire was one of the 3 most prosperous empires in the Central Plains. It was as famous as the Xuanji Empire and the Mizar Empire. The current Alcade Emperor was the nephew of the white-robed Alcade King. Although he wasn't as talented as the Alcade King, he could still be considered a great strategist. In the Sunset Divine City, the Alcade Sword God stood quietly. The 10 days were up. The Alcade Sword God, who had given up his position as paragon for a single person, finally decided to reach the peak after 100 years. When the Sword God proved his Tao, people came from all directions. All the sects in the world knew that once the number 1 person in the Central State 100 years ago ascended to the position of the Supreme, he would be the real powerhouse in the world. On the divine platform, the white-robed man stood quietly. Below him, the sect masters and taishang of various sects waited patiently. There were even mortal supremes who came to witness the birth of a supreme expert. Imperial uncle, it's almost time, reminded the Alcade Emperor. Wait, said the Alcade King calmly. In the distance, Zhao Liusu appeared and looked at the Alcade King on the divine platform. There were many paragons, but it was rare to see a sword god reach the position of paragon. The Alcade King, who hadn't become a paragon, was already the number 1 person in the Central State 100 years ago. Now that he had become a paragon, there was no doubt that he would be invincible on the immortal path. He was also a swordsman, so he shouldn't miss such an opportunity. Qing Ning, will the Jiming Marquis come? Not far away, Bai Lingling looked at her junior sister and asked. Yes, said Qing Ning calmly. He would never go back on his promises. On the other hand, if he didn't want to do something, no one could change it. If you ask him to stay, will he stay? Asked Bai Lingling again. Qing Ning fell silent. After a long time, she said softly, whether he will or not, I can't ask him. He has sacrificed too much for this world. Now, I won't interfere with his path. He's here. Just as the two of them were talking, Zhao Liusu's eyes narrowed and she looked to the west. At the same time, the Alcade King on the divine platform also looked over. When he saw the red-clothed figure in the distance, a flash of relief appeared in his eyes. Below the divine platform, the sect leaders and grand elders all had complicated expressions when they saw the red-clothed figure. The past grudges couldn't be put aside so easily. However, in the face of a great enemy, the famous Jiming Marquis of the Great Xia was indeed the best choice. Greetings, Senior Alcade King. Ning Chen ignored the people from the other sects and directly walked forward and bowed politely. It's good that you're here. In a moment, I'll try my best to break through to the Paragon realm. Watch carefully and remember as much as you can, said the Alcade King calmly. Yes. Ning Chen nodded. The Alcade King stepped into the air, step by step. His white robes fluttered in the wind, making him look like a celestial being who had descended to the mortal world. In an instant, the sky that had been clear a moment ago was filled with thunderclouds. Bolts of lightning more than 10 feet thick descended. The Alcade King waved his hand and a dazzling white sword shot into the sky. When the sword appeared in his hand, the world instantly stopped. Look carefully. You only have one chance. Wuji. The world rumbled as the sword moved. A huge sword wheel appeared behind the Alcade King and turned into a stream of swords that pierced through the sky. It was boundless and limitless as it slashed towards the thunderclouds. The Wuji sword, the Wuji sword. The thunderclouds that fell from the sky were destroyed by the stream of swords and instantly dissipated into nothingness. In an instant, the stream of swords pierced through the tribulation clouds. The sword intent spread out and the tribulation clouds dispersed. In the distance, the eyes of the paragons shrank. One sword. In the next moment, the sky shook and an ancient stone gate appeared. The dragon gate that represented the paragons of the paragons appeared in the world again. The Alcade King walked down and looked at the young man not far away. He said calmly, "Did you see it clearly?" "Yes," replied Ning Chen. The Alcade King nodded in satisfaction and said, "The first thing is done. Next, it's time to seek justice for what happened back then." As soon as he finished speaking, Alcade King glanced at the sovereigns of the various sects and the few human sovereigns floating in the distance. His expression turned cold as he said, "Shouldn't you give me an explanation for what happened back then?" The paragons and grand elders looked at each other. After a long time, a grand elder finally walked out and said respectfully, "Alcade King, back then, the Scarlet Serpent demon caused a calamity. We were just doing justice for the heavens." The Alcade King's gaze turned even colder when he heard that. He said, "Calamity? What kind of calamity? Before you chased after him, did he provoke you? Or rather, did he kill any innocent people?" The paragons fell silent. At this moment, a consecrator of the Xuanji dynasty walked out and said respectfully, "Alcade King, back then, Tian Jizi's instructions clearly pointed out that this person is the source of calamity. The Tianji city's prophecies have never been wrong. This is something that everyone knows. We can't let this demon cause a calamity. Otherwise, once the prophecy comes true, everything will be too late." "Very well." The Alcade King stepped forward and murderous intent exploded from his body. His expression was extremely cold as he said, "Did the Tianji city prophesy that today, I will make all of you stay in Luori Divine City?" Chapter 556. In Luori Divine City, the Alcade realm cultivators were furious. The cultivators of the sects all shut their mouths, not daring to say a word. Amidst the stalemate, the Alcade sword god coldly stared at the great sects of the world. Since he had interfered in this matter, he would definitely want a result. What happened back then wasn't the fault of one sect. If someone needs to suffer, it's Taibai. The chief of Taibai Prefecture showed up and walked towards the young man in red. He said in a hoarse voice, "Jiming Marquis, the last way out was blocked by my people. Today, Taibai Prefecture will pay for what he did back then." He unsheathed his Taoist sword for the first time since the battle on the Guiheng Sky Moon Peak. An arm was cut off and blood spurted everywhere. "Taibai." Bailey Jizun stepped forward and helped the chief of Taibai sect up. He sealed the chief's meridians. "Suffer. Qiu Yu and Tu Li Jizun are dead. I'll be the one to suffer." Zhao Liusu appeared and waved her hand. 9 wheels appeared and turned into a divine sword, slashing down. At this moment, red robe flashed and appeared in front of him in an instant. With a clang, he clamped the 9-wheeled divine sword between his fingers. Zhao Yosu, you don't have the right to hurt this body, Ning Qin said coldly. Ning Qin said coldly. Then, he looked at the Lord of Taibai Mansion who had lost an arm and said indifferently, Venerable Taibai, since the senior spared your life during the battle at Hung Tian Moon Peak, I won't pursue the matter any further. As for the revenge of the Central Prefecture, you won't be able to taste it. Jiming Marquis, if revenge breeds revenge, will there ever be an end to it? Since the sects want to resolve what happened back then, please give the world a chance, said Mu Huazuan seriously. The world doesn't owe me anything. You can't represent the world. I don't have time to care about kindness and hatred. I'm only here today because Senior Alcade invited me. Your hatred is too light, said Ning Qin coldly. Hearing this, Mu Huazuan sighed softly and said, Jiming Marquis, we will not beat around the bush anymore. Now that Tianfu Star's troops are coming to the 5 regions, the human world is in great danger. Tianfu Star has venerable swordsman and minister of heaven, and we can only stop one of them. Looking at the overall situation is not our strength. For the sake of the human world, we hope that Jiming Marquis can temporarily put aside the grudges of the past and accept the position of military advisor. Jiming Marquis, even if you don't want to help the Central Plains, the war between the Tianfu planet and the 5 regions will not only affect the Central Plains. Once the war starts, the Eastern region, the Divine Prefecture, and even the Great Xia Empire will not be spared. Do you want to watch the human world that you risked your life to protect suffer another catastrophe? Jiming Marquis' voice echoed. On the platform, the Alcade King didn't say a word. He looked down calmly. Today, all the decisions would be made by the knowing destiny realm. The human world, Ning Qin smiled coldly. Without saying anything, he turned around and walked away. Behind the various sects, Qing Ning stood quietly. Looking at the approaching figures, a gentle look appeared on her beautiful face. I thought you didn't see me, Qing Ning said softly. I saw you when I came, Ning Qin said with a smile. If you don't want to agree, then don't agree. The human world can't be destroyed. Even if it is, it doesn't matter, Qing Ning said gently as she stepped forward and brushed the dust off Ning Chen's clothes. Okay. Ning Chen smiled and said, Sister Qing Ning, where have you been all these years? Xiao Mountain, Qing Ning said. Buddhism? Ning Chen's eyelids twitched. Sister Qing Ning, are you going to shave your head and become a monk? Qing Ning's hand paused. The gentleness on her face disappeared. She raised her hand and hit Ning Chen's head. What are you thinking? Who said that you have to shave your head and become a monk if you want to cultivate in Buddhism? Ning Chen smiled embarrassedly and said, That's true. It seems that the Buddhists I met recently haven't shaved their heads. Then, Ning Chen looked at the Alcade King on the platform and said, Senior Alcade, Sister Qing Ning and I have something to talk about. We won't disturb you. Thank you for teaching me the sword. Okay, go ahead. The Alcade King nodded and didn't stop him. Qing Ning also looked at Bai Lingling and said, Senior sister, I will come back to look for you later. Go ahead. Bai Lingling nodded. Under the gazes of the various sects, Ning Chen and Qing Ning left. From the beginning to the end, they didn't look at the various sections. Under the platform, the pale-faced Taibai Palace chief sighed deeply. He waved his hand and summoned the dragon gate. Then, he walked in and left silently. Taibai. Sovereign Bailey raised his hand. He didn't have time to follow. He glanced at the white-robed man on the platform and said politely, Alcade King, congratulations on becoming a supremacy. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Please, the Alcade King said calmly. Sovereign Bailey nodded, took a step forward, and disappeared. Knowing destiny and the 2 sovereigns left. Zhao Yosu was silent. After a moment, her figure faded and she also left the divine city. Xuanwu, see the guests out, the Alcade king said. Yes. Sovereign Alcade replied. Then, he looked at the various sects in Zhongzhou and said calmly, everyone, the ceremony is over. Please go back. The sect masters and grand elders couldn't stay any longer. They looked at each other and left with different thoughts in their minds. Sovereign Alcade looked at the person beside him and asked in confusion, Uncle, why do the sects in Zhongzhou have to make the Marquis Jiming their military advisor? There are so many wise people in the world. Do they have to make him their military advisor? The position of a military advisor requires you to look at the overall situation and calculate the details. The tolerance required is not something ordinary people can achieve. Knowledge, experience, strength, wisdom, and methods all determine the height of a wise person. There is no lack of wise people in the world, but only the knowing destiny state can compete with the heaven minister, the Alcade king said calmly. The existence of the knowing destiny state was an anomaly. It was rare to see someone with such strength and wisdom at the same time. Just like there was only one heaven minister in Tianfu, there was only one knowing destiny state in the 5 regions. The Zhao family's sovereign had fused with the soul of 9 generations of sovereigns. Although he had lost his nature, he hadn't lost his most basic rationality. He could see the current situation clearly. If they couldn't invite the knowing destiny state, the 5 regions would be extremely passive in this war. Outside Luori Divine City, a red and a green figure walked side by side. After the death of their eldest grandson, the 2 of them were the only family members in each other's life. This precious warmth made them reluctant to part with it. Did you go back to see the Empress? Asked Qing Ning softly. Yes. Ning Chen nodded. I went back not long ago. I'm sorry I couldn't appear by your side when you were in danger, said Qing Ning apologetically. It's all in the past, said Ning Chen with a smile. How is the matter of the ghost girl? I asked Master for you. If you want to bring someone back from the dead, it's impossible to do it with the power of the human world. You have to find power that surpasses the limits of the human world, said Qing Ning. The West Jade Lord is indeed a wise person. I took many detours before I realized that I might have to leave the 5 regions soon and go to sky beyond heaven, said Ning Chen emotionally. Do you have a way? Asked Qing Ning in surprise. Yes. I found the immortal peach tree in the immortal palace. Now, I need to find the jade pool's water to revive it, said Ning Chen honestly. Tell me about your experiences over the past few years, said Qing Ning with a sigh. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and slowly told her everything he had experienced over the past few years. She was his only family in this world, so there was no need to hide anything from her. The 2 of them walked quietly from day to night. Their chaotic hearts were temporarily at peace. The story was very long, and it seemed like it wouldn't be finished even after several days. Qing Ning listened quietly. She didn't interrupt him, nor did she show any impatience. By the time he finished telling the story, the moon was hanging high in the sky. A cold wind blew, and it was late autumn. When Qing Ning finished listening to the story, she stopped and looked at the young man beside her. A smile appeared on her gentle face. Do whatever you want. You don't need to be bound by the matters of the mortal world. Back then, she and the Empress had brought him to Weiyang Palace because the Empress had been kind. She had been afraid that Ning Chen would cause trouble when he had just entered the palace and lose his life. She had never thought that such a hot-headed and reckless youth would eventually grow up to become the strongest marquis in the Grand Xia, shouldering the rise and fall of the entire dynasty. She and the Empress had bound him for over 10 years. Now, they couldn't let the matters of the mortal world drag him down. As the cold night deepened, Qing Ning left. In the west of Sunset Divine City, Hong Yi stood silently, thinking. Are you worried? Asked a black-robed figure coldly. Demonic chi gathered, and a black-robed figure appeared. As long as they're still in this world, I can't just leave them be, said Ning Chen with a sigh. What happens in the mortal world has nothing to do with me. However, the matter of the ghost woman can't be delayed. If you don't go, then give me your cultivation body. After suppressing the demonic tribulation, I'll go to sky beyond heaven myself, said the devil body indifferently. Ning Chen was silent. After a long time, he said, how much of your cultivation body can you use? I'm not sure. At my strongest, I can use 100%. At my weakest, for example, right now, I can use less than 30%, replied the devil body. I'll go to sky beyond heaven. As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Chen gazed at the devil by his side and said, however, I'm going alone. You'll only be a burden to me if you follow me. You have to stay behind to overcome the devil tribulation. Moreover, you'll be the safest here. Devils are not tolerated by the world. How can I be safe? Snorted the devil body. Devils are not tolerated by the world, but the military counselor of the 5 regions can. If you replace me, your identity as a military counselor will be your greatest cover, said Ning Chen. Military counselor? Scheming is your forte, not something a devil can do. Also, the various sects in the world aren't fools. How could they not recognize it? Ning Chen waved his hand, and a red robe and a white fan appeared. He handed them to the devil body and said seriously, you and I are one. Your understanding of me is unparalleled. As long as you want to imitate me, no one will be able to see through it. In addition, I'll give you a portion of the phoenix origin to help you suppress the demonic chi in your body. However, you must remember that unless it's absolutely necessary, don't use force. Otherwise, once the phoenix origin's power is exhausted, your identity will be exposed. Ning Chen paused for a moment, then waved his hand, summoning the green coffin and the datura flower seed. He continued, I've already given you the method to use the Yellow Spring's forbidden art. Take the immortal slaying sword and the datura flower seed. Right now, you need them more than I do. As for the responsibility of being a military counselor, although the devil body isn't good at wisdom, it's only relatively speaking. In this world, other than me, who would dare say that they can definitely defeat you? Chapter 557. Devil body, you have to remember that a person's heart is hard to predict. It can change at any time. Right now, the various sects need help from knowing destiny, so knowing destiny's identity is the best cover. However, the war between the 5 regions and the heavenly mansion will eventually end. At that time, people will remember the grudges that were once forgotten. A person's heart can be trusted, but it can't be completely trusted. When you judge, emotion, trust, sincerity, and profit are all indispensable. Finally, and also the most important thing, knowing destiny's fate isn't just yours. No matter what, you have to leave a way out for yourself. As long as you can survive, you don't care what price you have to pay. The phoenix body's words echoed in the night sky. After saying all the things that needed to be said, the phoenix soared into the sky. The black robes in the night changed into red robes and replaced the phoenix body's killing body in the 5 regions. Then it turned and left. Before the devil tribulation, he had to do his best to protect himself. This identity would bring him quite a bit of convenience. However, he had to adapt quickly to avoid being seen through. Imitating someone else wasn't easy, even if that other person was the person he understood the most about. On the heavenly mansion planet, the various sects experts had gathered. They were all at the Xiantian level. In order to obtain more resources and more authority for the heavenly mansion, the celestial minister had given his orders. After the probing battle, he would officially send his troops to the inner realm. Sword Sovereign, let's go, said Xiao Bieli. Yes. Mu Chang'e responded softly and stepped into the array with his sword on his back. In the next moment, the two of them vanished from the heavenly mansion. In the inner realm, above the central continent, the void trembled and two figures appeared. Soon, thousands of innate realm cultivators walked out one after another. They formed a black cloud that covered the sky. The Heavenly Mansion's army had officially appeared in the 5 regions. Half a day later, 10 cities near the sea on the eastern side of the Central Plains were quickly occupied by the Heavenly Mansion's army. Most of the commoners were expelled, and less than 20% remained. Anyone who resisted was slaughtered. The cruelty of war was evident on the first day. Celestial Minister, isn't this going too far? Venerable Dong Sun sighed as he looked at the rivers of blood. In war, blood will flow at any time. Educating the commoners requires time, and what we lack the most is time. Xiao Bieli calmly said. Although that's the case, won't that cause the commoners to reject the heavenly palaces even more? After all, we'll have to move them here in the end, said Venerable Dongshuan worriedly. Those who aren't of our race have different hearts. This is not only true for the heavenly palace, but also for the inner realm. Whether or not we expel these commoners, the 5 regions' rejection of the heavenly palace won't change, but, at this point, Xiao Bieli paused for a moment, and then his tone turned cold. So long as we obtain victory in this war, then the authority to enlighten the world will be in the hands of the heaven's sanctum. The hearts of the people will always be the easiest thing to placate and change. There was another thing that Xiao Bieli didn't say. Apart from eliminating future troubles, expelling these commoners had another important effect that would soon be revealed. Heavenly phase. At this moment, Honorable Tiandu walked over and bowed respectfully. How is it? Have any human exalts appeared? Xiao Bieli asked calmly. Not yet, Tiandu replied. Too slow. Since they're not coming, order the army to continue occupying the surrounding areas, said Xiao Bieli coldly. Yes. Honored Tiandu respectfully replied. Xiao Bieli's gaze grew colder as he watched them leave. If the Central Plains leader was as ordinary as last time, then the Heavenly Palace would gladly accept the 5 regions. North of the Central Region, the headquarters of the 5 Territory Alliance, Jingfeng City. Zhao Liusu frowned as she listened to the battle reports that were being sent back. What a fast speed. That Tian Xiang was attacking so crazily. Did he not think about whether they could defend themselves? This was the inner realm, and the Heavenly Palace's army had penetrated deep into the inner realm. The front line was too high, and their limited forces would be scattered. Alliance Sovereign, is it time to counterattack? Asked Mu Huazuan respectfully. Zhao Liusu thought for a moment and nodded. Mu Huazuan, Bailey Zun, each of you lead an army to take back the occupied cities. Yes. The 2 human exalts accepted the order and turned to leave. In the eastern part of the Central Plains, the battle between the 2 sides had finally begun. Mu Huazuan and Bailey Zun appeared at the back of the army and commanded the allied forces to take back the occupied cities. However, the battle wasn't as intense as they had imagined. The cities that the Heavenly Palace had occupied didn't have too many soldiers guarding them. After taking over the cities and driving away the commoners, they continued to move towards the surrounding cities. Every time the various sects took back a city, Heaven's Abode would give up a city and then take back another one. Other than the first 10 cities that they took back, which were guarded by a large number of soldiers and supreme beings, the rest of the cities were easily taken back. The reports were sent back to Vanguard City. Zhao Liusu frowned. She couldn't see what the Heavenly Phase expert from the Heavenly Palace planet was planning. At the same time, the Alcade Monarch was cultivating his sword in the Sunset Divine City. He hadn't left since he stepped into the Sovereign Realm. The Sword God had been cultivating his sword for many days, waiting for the Heavenly Palace Sword Sovereign to make his move. This battle would eventually return to the battle between the top experts. Only then would the true decisive battle begin. In the eastern part of the Central Plains, the battle for the cities had gone on for many days. The cities that the Heavenly Palace had occupied were taken back continuously, but they didn't stop attacking. In the 10 cities, the Heavenly Palace's soldiers were continuously sent over from the Heavenly Palace planet. The Heavenly Phase Expert and the Heavenly Sword Sovereign protected the city with all their might to prevent any accidents from happening. Relatively speaking, the various powers of the Central Plains had also sent in more and more soldiers. Almost all the martial artists above the Khanate realm had gathered and were rushing to the eastern battlefield. At the same time, a red-robed figure stood quietly on a mountain peak 1,000 miles away from the battlefield. He coldly watched the development of the battle as the mockery in his eyes grew thicker and thicker. Stupid. After so many days of fighting, the various powers of the Central Plains were still thinking about the gains and losses of the cities. If this continued, the Central Plains would be defeated before the decisive battle even began. Behind him, Bai Yunlian looked at the figure in front of her. Confusion flashed through her eyes. She didn't know why, but she felt that the person in front of her was slightly different from before. However, when she sensed it carefully, she couldn't tell what was wrong. "Miss Bai, let's go to Vanguard City and help out our comrades." After a long time, Ning Chen turned and walked forward with a smile. "Yes." Bai Yunlian suppressed the doubts in his heart and stepped forward to catch up. Red light gathered in front of the majestic Vanguard City, and a figure walked out. The two half-step sovereigns in front of the city were startled when they saw this person. When they came back to their senses, they immediately bowed. At the same time, Zhao Yosu stood up and said in a serious tone, "He's here." Chapter 558. In Peak Competition City, Knowing Destiny appeared with Zhao Yosu at the head. The sovereigns of the various sects personally welcomed him. The War of the Five Regions forced the two sides to temporarily put aside their grudges and work together against the enemy. "Greetings, advisor." The sovereigns in the hall all bowed. Beside the Alliance Master's seat, there was a seat made of purple gold. A red-robed man sat high up, holding a white fan. He had a gentle and harmless smile on his face. "Sovereigns, there's no need to be so courteous," said Ning Chen. "Advisor, you are able to put aside your personal enmity and disregard the past to help the five regions fight against the foreign enemies. Such breadth of mind is truly admirable." Venerable Hong Lu stood up and spoke to ease the somewhat tense atmosphere. Ning Chen smiled and said, "Let's not talk about the misunderstandings of the past anymore. Right now, the most important thing is to focus on dealing with Heaven's Sanctum. The battle reports from the past few days are here." "Advisor, please take a look," said Zhao Yosu as she handed over the battle reports. Ning Chen took the reports and carefully read them one by one. He didn't say a word. The sovereigns were waiting in front of him. The Knowing Destiny Marquis was only a legend. Until it was proven, they wouldn't be completely convinced. After a long time, Ning Chen put down the reports and calmly asked, "Why are you in such a hurry to take back these cities?" Zhao Yosu frowned and said, "Why? Shouldn't we take back the cities that Heaven's Sanctum seized as soon as possible? Are there any important resources around these cities?" Ning Chen asked again. "Other than a few iron mines, there aren't any special resources," said Zhao Yosu. "The Heaven's Sanctum's army has just arrived in the central province. 10 cities are enough for them to use as a base." "Zhao Yosu, tell me, how many mistakes have you made in the past few days?" asked Ning Chen calmly. Zhao Yosu thought for a moment and said, 2. First, I wasn't prepared enough for Heaven's Sanctum's arrival. Second, it was difficult to find out the enemy's goal. 10, said Ning Chen slowly. Oh. Zhao Yosu was startled and couldn't react for a moment. Sovereign Xianzhen couldn't stand it anymore and said, "Advisor, even if you have some old grudges with the Alliance Sovereign, there's no need to exaggerate his mistakes." Ning Chen looked at Xianzhen Zun in front of him and said indifferently, "I've already said that the past is the past. We're just discussing this matter. Then tell me, what are the 10 mistakes that Alliance Venerables made?" Xianzhen Venerables asked in disbelief. "Firstly, They weren't prepared for the appearance of the Heaven Sanctum's army. Of the 4 sides of the central region, the Zhao clan and the Xuanji dynasty are in the north. Even the allied army's main camp is here. Since the Heaven Sanctum has just arrived, they don't have enough troops. They definitely won't choose this place as their base of operations. Furthermore, as for the other 3 sides, the south borders the southern tomb, while the west borders the guardian Buddhist land. Only the east. The east side of the sea region is the divine prefecture of the eastern region, which has just experienced the great tribulation of the underworld king. They don't have many experts, so the threat is the smallest. Therefore, it's not difficult to guess where the Heaven Sanctum's army will arrive. The east side of the central region is the most convenient place to attack and the easiest place to retreat. Secondly, we weren't able to send troops in time. Even if we missed the best time to ambush them, it wouldn't have been too late to send out troops to stop them when the Heaven's Sanctum arrived. Being cautious and hesitant will only make things worse. This is the inner realm. Whether it's the right time, the right place, or the right people, everything is on our side. This is also the time when the Heaven's Sanctum is least likely to set up a trap. What's the point of waiting and watching? Thirdly, there are no priorities. There are only 2 reasons why the Heaven's Sanctum's army is constantly attacking the cities. One is to attract the attention of the inner realm. They need time. Aside from stabilizing their rear lines, their biggest goal is to transfer troops from the Heaven's Sanctum. During this time, the Allied army didn't attack even once. Fourthly, the responsibility of not investigating. After the Heaven's Sanctum occupies a city, the first thing they do is expel the civilians. Do you really think this is just to make it easier to govern? Right now, the civilians hate the Heaven's Sanctum the most. The headquarters of the various religions are here, and these refugees will head north sooner or later. 1 city of refugees is easy to arrange, and 2 cities won't be a problem. But what about 10 cities? What about 20 cities? When millions of refugees head north and you can't deal with them and can only watch them die, will the people they hate the most still be the Heaven's Sanctum? Fifthly, it's an unclear mistake. What's the point of taking back the occupied cities? The war has already begun, so there's no need to talk about morality. Since these places have already been lost, there's no need to waste troops and energy to take them back. If the Heaven's Sanctum is willing to split up their forces, then let them. What we need to do is not lose new cities and increase the number of refugees. Sixthly, advisor, there's no need to say any more. On the seat of honor, Zhao Yosu stopped the former from continuing. Her pretty face was already pale. She stood up, walked forward, and respectfully bowed. Military advisor, please tell us what to do next. I need military power, absolute military power, said Ningchen coldly. Zhao Yosu was silent for a moment. A moment later, she took out half a purple jade talisman and handed it over. This talisman contains a trace of the soul imprint of all the chosen in the alliance. Although it has been split in 2, no one knows where their soul imprint is. As long as you have this talisman, you have the power to mobilize the Central Plains army. Ning Chen took the jade talisman and scanned it with his spiritual sense. Sure enough, he felt several powerful auras. A trace of a soul was very important even to a chosen. Once it was destroyed, although they wouldn't die, they would be heavily injured. Ning Chen raised his head and looked at the expert standing at the peak of the human world. He said calmly, "Everyone, the war officially begins now. Exalt Li, immediately send someone to inform Bai Li and Mu Hua that they don't need to fight for the lost cities anymore. They need to focus on cooperating with Exalt Chi Wei to stop the Heavenly Province's army. Exalt Hong Lu, immediately arrange for the refugees. Remember, be careful of those who spread rumors and take advantage of the situation. Once discovered, kill without mercy." Speaking up to here, Ning Chen paused for a moment. He glanced at the three exalts on the right and continued, also, exalt Xianzhen, exalt Yusheng, and exalt Qingyu, the three of you will come with me to explore the 10 cities behind the Heavenly Province and find out how they're mobilizing their troops from the Heavenly Province planet. Yes. The 5 exalts respectfully accepted the order. Is there anything you need me to do? Asked Zhao Liusu on the side. Ning Chen looked away and said calmly, there is. Alliance Exalt's mission is to protect competitive Peak City. I don't want to return to find that this place has already become a place where the Heavenly Province has ambushed their troops. Zhao Liusu nodded and said, don't worry. As long as I'm alive, no one from the Heavenly Province planet will be able to step into this city. One last thing. That sword exalt is quite troublesome. Tell Senior Yao Guang to be prepared to act at any time, reminded Ning Chen. Don't worry about that. The Yaoguang King has already been cultivating his sword for several days. As long as the Heavenly Province sword exalt appears, he will immediately act to stop him, said Zhao Liusu. Hearing that, Ning Chen nodded. This was the most unpredictable part. No matter how brilliant a plan was, it still needed a powerful force to support it. Otherwise, it would be meaningless. Absolute power was always the most effective way to decide the outcome of a war. Up until now, the Heavenly Province Star Exalt that he had been wary of still hadn't appeared. There was an 80 to 90% chance that he was heavily injured while destroying the Netherworld King's formation. The most important thing was that this war that seemed to be evenly matched had to end before the Heavenly Province Star Exalt appeared. Otherwise, the 5 regions would be in an extremely disadvantageous position. In the eastern part of the Central Plains, Xiao Bieli stood silently in one of the 10 cities. At this moment, a black-robed Xiantian expert appeared in the distance. He half knelt and said, Minister of Heaven, the inner world's sects have changed their direction. Oh. Where did they go? A strange light flashed in Xiao Bieli's eyes. The 2 sovereigns, Bai Li and Mu Hua, who were in charge of taking back the cities we occupied, have already led their troops to the southwest. Their target should be Senior Qi Wei, replied the kneeling Xiantian expert. Yes, I understand. You can leave for now, said Xiao Bieli calmly. Yes. The black-robed Xiantian expert accepted the order and vanished in the blink of an eye. Xiao Bieli glanced back at the formations in the city, and his eyes narrowed slightly. Is it a coincidence, or has the leader of the inner realm finally become enlightened? If it's the latter, then this war probably won't be as boring as it was before. The sun was setting in the west, and a crescent moon was slowly rising in the eastern sky. A cold wind blew across the land that had been eroded by war. Everywhere was desolate and bleak. As the night deepened, 4 figures appeared 100 miles away from the 10 cities. Their auras were completely concealed. The person in the lead was wearing red robes that looked like they were dyed in blood under the night sky. Xianzhen, Yusheng, Qingyu, the 3 sovereigns will each investigate the 3 cities. In 2 hours, gather here. Remember, if you're exposed, don't worry about anything. Immediately retreat, said Ning Chen. Understood. The 3 venerables nodded in response, and then their figures flashed as they headed off in different directions. Once the 3 sovereigns left, Ning Chen looked at the city in front of him and walked over. Of the 10 cities, the Minister of Heaven was most likely to be in this city. Hopefully, his guess was correct. Heavenly Huan City was covered in dense formations. Lines of formation runes rose into the air, and every part of it was shining with a strange light. Within the formation, there were 4 sovereigns using their bodies as the foundation to maintain the formation's operation. Outside the formation, the Sword Sovereign and the Minister of Heaven were silently standing. Ever since they had arrived at the Heavenly Palace, they hadn't taken half a step away. The forbidden area was heavily guarded, and no one was allowed to approach. Not even the people of the Heavenly Palace were allowed to approach. Minister of Heaven. At this moment, a black-robed Xiantian expert appeared 300 meters away and knelt. What is it, asked Xiaobieli. Our scouts have reported that an unfamiliar red-robed youth appeared in Peak Competition City today. He seems to have attracted the attention of the sovereigns of the inner world, reported the black-robed Xiantian expert. Oh. Xiaobieli's eyes lit up when he heard this. Investigate again. Chapter 559. Red stood outside Tianheng City. Tian Xiang stood quietly in Tianheng City. More than a decade ago, Knowing Destiny and Military Counselor confronted each other. Now, the real battle between the wise men had reappeared in the world. There were very few people in the world who could bear the title of a wise man. More than 10 years ago, Fan Lingyue ruled the world and single-handedly brought the northern Meng imperial court to its peak. He raised the definition of a wise man to an unprecedented height. Since then, the divine prefecture could be called a wise man. That was Fan Lingyue's era. He was like the only moon in the sky, shining on the world. No one could hide his brilliance. Even the 5 most powerful innate masters were overshadowed by him. Later, Luoyue of Luoyue City, Zhong Qianqiu, and Xian Zhi appeared one after another. They seemed to have inherited the title of wise man. However, Knowing Destiny was very clear that after Fan Lingyue, there were no more wise men in the divine land. Even if Qianqiu and Xuanzhi weren't bad, at most they weren't bad. The reason why Grand Xia was so tired of dealing with them was because before that, Fan Lingyue had almost crippled the invincible Grand Xia. The biggest difficulty of the chaos of the 4 extremes was the timing of its appearance. The real threat of the Eternal Night sect was the hierarch of the Eternal Night, who seemed to be the most powerful man in the world. In that era, the only person who could fight Mu Bai to a standstill without using his own weapon was the Eternal Night sect master. At that time, Knowing Destiny only took 2 strikes from Mu Bai. After that, Yama, who came to the world, had nothing to do with the word wise man at all. He had absolute power and didn't need any wisdom to serve as a foil. In just 10 years, Knowing Destiny's opponent went from the most wise man in the world, Fan Lingyue, to Yama, who had the power to destroy everything. He had seen the peak. Now that he experienced the same thing again, he gradually calmed down. After Heaven's Sanctum descended, Ning Chen had seen everything the Celestial had done. Without a doubt, this person was an extraordinary opponent. Every step he took was impeccable, far surpassing the likes of Zhong Qianqiu and Xian Zhi. If Fan Lingyue looked at the world and found something strange, then this Tian Xiang was careful and didn't leave any flaws. The Minister of the Land of Abundance was not an empty title. Before that star venerable appeared, this man was undoubtedly the biggest enemy of the 5 regions. Outside Heavenly Eternal City, Ning Chen quietly looked at the city in front of him. He didn't take a single step in for 2 whole hours. In Eternal Heaven City, Xiaobieli was deep in thought. The red-robed young man reminded him of White Jade Jing, a young swordsman whom he admired. However, it was unlikely that these 2 people were the same person. When Bai Yujing left the Heaven's Mansion, the Underworld King's boundary hadn't been broken yet. The people of the inner realm couldn't leave and the people of the outer realm couldn't enter. 2 hours later, 50 kilometers away from Eternal Heaven City, Xianzhen, Yusheng, and Qingyu returned. At this moment, a calm voice sounded. 3 sovereigns, please come to Eternal Heaven City. When the 3 venerables heard this, they looked at each other. Suppressing the shock in their hearts, they quickly rushed forward. Outside the city, Ning Chen turned around to glance at the 3 of them and said, "How is it? Did you discover anything?" Reporting to the military advisor, "We didn't find anything special," said the Xuanzhen Reverend. "Military advisor, there's only one city left that we haven't explored," said the Yusheng Reverend. Ning Chen nodded. Looking at the city, he said, "There's no need to explore it. The Heaven's Mansion's army's source is in this city. Now, it's up to you to destroy it." The 3 of them were surprised. Reverend Qing Yu cautiously asked, military advisor, is that sword sovereign in this city? He is, said Ning Chen calmly. Military advisor, with that person around, we won't be able to charge through, said the Xuanzhen Reverend. If the sword sovereign takes action, the Alcade King will also take action, said Ning Chen indifferently. The three sovereigns were silent. They had all seen how terrifying the sword sovereign was. The Alcade King was far away in Sunset Divine City. Whether or not he could stop the sword sovereign was unknown. This was undoubtedly a gamble with their lives. Whether you go or not is up to you. I can only tell you that after tonight, it'll be very difficult for you to have another chance, said Ning Chen casually. Any brilliant plan required a powerful force to support it. If the three sovereigns couldn't make up their minds to enter the city, then tonight's operation would be meaningless. It was impossible for there to be no Heaven's Mansion spies in competitive Peak City. Once Tian Xiang learned that he was the military advisor of the 5 regions, there would be no chance for him to destroy the city. Of course, after tonight, he wouldn't use those who didn't listen to him anymore. Military advisor, let's think about it at length. If the Alcade King can't stop the Heaven's Mansion's sword sovereign, not just the 3 of us, but even you will be in danger. The 3 of them hesitated for a moment before Reverend Yuxing stepped forward. Ning Chen smiled faintly and didn't say anything more. He turned and walked north. He didn't have a phoenix body, and he had no feelings for this world. He had already given them a chance, but they didn't cherish it. Then he would take more lives to make up for it. The 3 sovereigns followed and left together. Ning Chen and the 3 sovereigns returned to competitive Peak City. Zhao Liusu immediately went up to greet them. Military advisor, how was it? Did you find the source of the Heaven's Mansion's army? Yes. Ning Chen nodded. Did you destroy it? Asked Zhao Liusu. No, the city is guarded by the sword sovereign. The 3 sovereigns were worried about my safety, so they suggested we think about it at length, smiled Ning Chen. Zhao Liusu was stunned when she heard this, and then she swiftly understood what was going on. She glanced at Xianzhen, Yusheng, and Qingyu before she said in a low voice, the 3 of you leave first. I have something to discuss with the military advisor. Yes. The 3 of them bowed and left. After the 3 sovereigns left, only Zhao Liusu and Ning Chen remained in the hall. The atmosphere was extremely tense. Military advisor, you clearly know the importance of this trip. Why didn't you give the order for the 3 of them to attack the city? Asked Zhao Liusu. It's rare that the alliance sovereigns don't know what it means to agree on the surface but oppose on the surface. They're already afraid. Once the sword sovereign attacks, do you think they'll resist or run? Smiled Ning Chen. Zhao Liusu clenched her fists, unable to suppress the fury in her heart. She knew that these sovereigns weren't easy to control, which was why she had suggested using the Jade Talisman to control them. She hadn't expected that it would still be so difficult to command them at such a crucial moment. Is there any other way? Asked Zhao Liusu, raising her head. Ning Chen's lips curved. My mission is just to mobilize the troops to fight against the Heavenly Sanctum's leader. As for how to control them, that's not my responsibility. Alliance Sovereign, you should think about it yourself. Zhao Liusu's heart skipped a beat. She clenched her fists so hard that they turned pale. Taking a deep breath, she said, is there a chance to salvage the situation tomorrow night? If not, how much of an impact will it have on this battle? The opportunity has already been lost, and there's no way to salvage it. As for the impact, Ning Chen smiled. If we make a mistake, we'll just have to use lives to make up for it. As for how many lives will be needed, you'll know in the future. After waiting for an entire night, I'm sure you're tired. I won't disturb you any longer. I'll take my leave first. Ning Chen didn't stay any longer. He turned and walked out of the hall. Bang! Ning Chen walked out of the main hall. Inside the hall, the sound of something being smashed into pieces could be heard. The entire main hall shook violently. Such a shocking commotion was enough to show how furious the person inside was. In front of the hall, the two guards trembled. Looking at the red-clothed person walking out, they lowered their heads. They didn't understand what the military advisor had said to the Alliance sovereign to make the Alliance sovereign so angry. Ning Qin sneered. He didn't care when this battle would end. The only reason he agreed to stay was because he needed this identity as a cover. The Phoenix body's warning was right. The human heart could be trusted, but it could never be trusted completely. The three sovereigns' temporary retreat would make the entire central continent pay the most painful price. Once the war began, there weren't many opportunities for both sides. Wasting one was one less. Originally, the central continent had the geographical advantage. As long as they destroyed the heavenly sanctum source of soldiers, the inner realm would have the absolute advantage for a short period of time. Even if they didn't use any schemes, they would be able to deal a heavy blow to the heavenly sanctum. However, from today onward, they would no longer have this advantage. Ning Chen. Just as Ning Chen walked 100 steps out of the hall, Qing Ning, who had rushed over after hearing the news, called out to him. Qing Ning. Sister Qing Ning. Ning Chen regained his senses. He paused for a moment and then called out in an unaccustomed manner. When Qing Ning heard this, her beautiful eyes narrowed and she said, "Follow me." Hearing this, Ning Chen stepped forward and followed. After walking for a quarter of an hour, Qing Ning walked into a quiet side hall. Then, she stopped. Ning Chen also stopped. His eyes were filled with confusion. Qing Ning turned around and said, "The current you is the demonic body he spoke of, right?" Ning Chen's heart trembled. How could this be? When had he revealed a flaw? There's nothing to be surprised about. Qing Ning walked up and closed the door. She softly said, "I picked you up and brought you into the palace. I also watched you grow up step by step. Others might not be able to see your change, but it's impossible to hide it from me." Ning Chen's body stiffened. After a long time, he gradually relaxed. "You're not nervous anymore?" Qing Ning smiled and walked up to hit his head. "Whether you're a human or a demon, you, Qing Ning, will always be your sister Qing Ning. There's no difference. Do you remember?" Ning Chen stiffly nodded. "When the sun rises, come with me to the sword-casting manor. I heard you injured the sword-casting manor. This matter can't be dragged on. The sword-casting manor has always been upright and has never offended you. Since you injured him, then you have to bear the consequences of your mistake." Qing Ning calmly said. Now that the Empress wasn't here, only she could take care of him. A mistake was a mistake. Whether it was the phoenix body or the demon body, they both had to bear the consequences of their actions. "Yes." Ning Chen nodded once more and softly replied. Eternal Heaven City. When the first rays of the morning sun shone down, a black-clothed Xiantian cultivator appeared and respectfully said, "Minister of Heaven, the information has been verified. That red-clothed young man is the military advisor of the 5 regions. This is the portrait sent over by the scouts." Xiao Bieli waved his hand and received the portrait. After looking at it, his pupils constricted. "It's him." Xiao Bieli waved his hand and destroyed the portrait. He solemnly said, "Order Zhenyang, Dong Sun, Tian Du, and Tai Xian to immediately defend Eternal Heaven City." Chapter 560. In the northwest of Zhengzhou, 2 people were walking forward. The woman in the blue dress was beautiful and had an extraordinary temperament. Qing Ning, who had followed Zhang Sun since she was a child, had some of Zhang Suan's shadow in her. She was gentle and reserved, but also dignified. Ning Chen followed beside Qing Ning. His eyes were less arrogant and indifferent, but more peaceful and peaceful. In the knowing destiny state, although the devil's body was an anomaly, the three bodies were originally one and would eventually affect each other. It was unavoidable. If there were people in the knowing destiny state who could completely trust, Qing Ning would definitely be at the top of the list. The closer they got to the sword-casting villa, the slower Ning Chen walked. The rejection in his heart became more and more obvious. The devil's body was proud and cold. How could it apologize to others easily? If Qing Ning hadn't spoken, he probably wouldn't have stepped into the sword-casting villa in this life. Qing Ning stopped and looked at Ning Chen, who was walking slower and slower. A dangerous smile appeared on her face. She said, "Do you need me to drag you along?" Ning Chen looked at the beautiful smile on Qing Ning's face. His body trembled subconsciously and he quickened his pace. Qing Ning's smile didn't fade, but became much gentler. As she walked, she asked softly, "Ning Chen, do you know why the devil is not accepted by the world?" "Because the devil won't follow the rules set by humans," Ning Chen answered after a moment of silence. Qing Ning nodded with a smile. She said, "You're right. Humans fear the devil because there used to be a devil who harmed the world. The devil who harmed the world didn't follow any rules of the human world. A person's memory is very complicated. Kindness and affection are mostly fleeting. But the fear of the past will be remembered for a lifetime and even passed down for thousands of years. They deserve to die." Ning Chen's eyes flashed with coldness and murderous intent. "Jingxin." Qing Ning put her hand in front of Ning Chen's heart and said softly, "I don't care about anyone in Zhongzhou. Even if you kill them all, I won't blame you. But killing is a habit. It will slowly make you lose yourself. One day, you will lose yourself and feel that everything can be solved by killing. It's hard to turn back. Do you understand?" "No." Ning Chen shook his head. Qing Ning put down her hand and looked to the east. She said, "You should know why you have this body." "Yes." Ning Chen nodded. "This is the reason." Qing Ning sighed softly and said, "In order to stop the Netherworld King, the Phoenix body and Fan Lingyue sacrificed millions of innocent people in the Divine Prefecture. Fan Lingyue used the last of his soul to repay the world. However, in order to resurrect the ghost girl, he lived on at all costs. As I said just now, if you kill too many people, you will lose yourself. Your existence is because of the negative emotions that he has been suppressing in his heart. Is my appearance a mistake?" Ning Chen's eyes gradually turned cold as he asked. "No." Qing Ning shook her head and said, "You and he are the same person. It's just that you've separated. In some ways, you're even better than the knowing destiny state." When Ning Chen heard this, the coldness in his eyes dissipated, and a trace of confusion appeared. He asked, "Where?" "Follow your heart." Qing Ning replied softly, "The knowing destiny state is a human body. Although he is smarter and more rational than everyone in the world, he can't escape the bondage of love after all. He rushes about because of love and treats the world well because of love. You are a demon, and you don't see love as much as he does. Perhaps this little bit of humanity left is only because you are influenced by the other two souls. If you are not trapped by love, your life will not be so tiring. Then you." "Sister Qing Ning, why did you bring me here?" "Apologizing is not something a demon should do." Ning Chen snorted coldly. "Responsibility." Qing Ning said calmly, "You have to bear the consequences of your own actions. It's a good thing to follow your heart, but you can't act recklessly. I can't control the former devil, but I can't control you. The sects in the central province have wronged you. You can seek revenge on them, but Sword Forging Villa has never wronged you. Therefore, you have to admit this mistake. Whether you're willing or not, there's no room for discussion. I'm your sister, so you have to listen to me." "Okay." Ning Chen nodded and didn't quibble anymore. Perhaps he was really influenced by the other two souls. Every time he argued with Qing Ning, it was more difficult than facing a supreme master. Moreover, he didn't seem to reject this little bit of humanity in his heart. Apologize? No matter what, it was easier than facing Qing Ning, who could go crazy at any time. They quickened their pace and got closer to Sword Forging Villa. Although they were still far away, they could vaguely see the frost and flame mountains that had been destroyed in the previous battle. At sunset, they finally arrived at Sword Forging Villa. The once famous sword forging family gradually chose to live in seclusion after the sword master was seriously injured. They no longer interfered with the affairs of the central province. In front of the villa, 2 doormen were guarding. Their cultivation was not bad, almost reaching the Khanate realm. For their age, it was already a good level. Honorable guests, please wait. The villa is not receiving guests now. When the 2 approached, one of the doormen stepped forward and stopped them. We are here to visit the sword master. Please make an exception, Qing Ning said sincerely. Sorry, the sword master is not seeing anyone now. Please go back, the doorman refused again. Seeing that the 2 refused to let them go, Ning Chen frowned. He was about to step forward when Qing Ning glared at him. Brother Bai. Just as Qing Ning was about to speak again, a little girl with braided hair who looked to be about 12 or 13 years old saw the 2 of them and jogged over, beaming with joy. Qing Ning's eyes narrowed and she turned around with a questioning gaze. Ning Chen did not reply. He tried his best to show a bright smile and looked at the little girl. I haven't seen you in 3 or 4 years. You've grown so big. Brother Bai, where's sister Bai? Looked around but did not see Bai Yunlian. She was slightly disappointed. Your sister Bai is busy and did not come. We want to see the sword master. Bring us in, Ning Chen said seriously. You're looking for Grandpa Sword Master? Er's eyes flashed with a strange light. She thought for a moment and said to the doorman, let them in. They are my friends. Yes, young miss. The 2 doormen said respectfully. After they finished speaking, they stepped aside and no longer blocked the way. Brother Bai, where have you and sister Bai been all these years? Why haven't you come to see even once? Turned around and complained as she led the way. We went on a long trip. As soon as we came back, we came to see you, Ning Chen replied. Qing Ning was helpless. Her ability to spout nonsense had not changed at all. Not long after you and sister Bai left, Grandpa Sword Master ordered the manor to be sealed. I couldn't go out either. I thought you 2 would never come to see me again, muttered. Aren't we here now? Ning Chen smiled. Brother Bai, when you see Grandpa Sword Master later, can you ask him to take me out to play for a few days? Turned around again and asked with a longing look on her face. Ning Chen looked at Qing Ning for help. Qing Ning ignored him. Her attitude was very clear. She had caused the trouble herself, so she had to solve it herself. Ning Chen looked at the little girl unnaturally and tactfully refused. There is still a war outside. It's very dangerous. Wait a few more days. Oh. Seemed to understand something and nodded. A trace of loneliness flashed in her eyes. It was very faint, but it was clear enough to make one's heart ache. Right? Qing Ning revealed a gentle smile and said, your brother Bai is just joking with you. There is indeed a war outside. However, he is a military advisor and doesn't need to go to the battlefield. When he sees Grandpa Sword Master later, your brother Bai will plead for you. When heard this, her lonely face immediately brightened up. She nodded vigorously and said, thank you sister. Thank you Bai. Before she could finish speaking, the little girl snorted. She was clearly angry with someone. Ning Chen looked at Qing Ning in confusion. How could he take a little girl with him now? Grandpa Sword Master, Brother Bai is here. In front of a study room, Een knocked on the door and said crisply. Come in, Een. Wait outside. As he spoke, the door creaked open. Inside, an old man in a wheelchair appeared in front of the two of them. Okay. Een nodded obediently and stopped in front of the door. She did not enter. Ning Chen and Qing Ning walked in. Seeing the old man in the room, Ning Chen politely bowed. Greetings, Grandpa Sword Master. Who is this lady? Master Sword Forger glanced at Ning Chen before shifting his gaze to the woman in the green dress. Qing Ning, Ning Chen's older sister, replied Qing Ning. Hearing this, a strange look flashed across Swordsmitha's old eyes. The world-famous Jiming Marquis had a sister. May I ask why the two of you have come? Asked Grandpa Sword Master. We came to apologize. Qing Ning said, back then, there was a problem with my younger brother's cultivation. The demonic body left my body and injured Grandpa Sword Master. Although it wasn't my younger brother's intention, a mistake is a mistake. Today, Qing Ning has brought my younger brother here to apologize to Grandpa Sword Master for what happened back then. Grandpa Sword Master frowned and said, what about the demonic body? The demonic chi that erupted from the demonic will ocean was extremely shocking. Suppressing it won't be easy. The demonic body has already been exiled to the outer heavens. It won't be able to return in its lifetime, said Ning Chen calmly. Grandpa Sword Master nodded and sighed emotionally. That's good. As long as the world doesn't suffer from the demonic disaster, my injuries are worth it. Ning Chen was silent. A moment later, he waved his hand and a blood-red sword surrounded by demonic chi appeared and landed in front of Grandpa Sword Master. Grandpa Sword Master, I injured you back then. Today, I'll return the favor. This time, I won't fight back. After this sword, we'll be even. Forget it, I'm old. If I'm crippled, then so be it. You're still young. As long as you know you're wrong, that's enough. I only hope that you can be a little more forgiving when you face the grudges between the central continent's sections. People's hearts are easily tainted. You can't kill all of them. Grandpa Sword Master looked at Qing Ning and said gently, Miss Qing Ning, Jiming Marquis is truly fortunate to have an older sister like you. Chapter 561. The great Xia Jiming Marquis, who had never lowered his head in his entire life, admitted his mistake in front of an elder with crippled legs. Qing Ning stood to the side and watched quietly. No matter what happened in the past or in the future, a mistake was a mistake. The elder sister was like a mother. Her mother was no longer here, so she was the only one who could take care of it. The sword master accepted the bow, but he did not pick up the sword in front of him. Forgiveness was not easy, and it was even harder to repay kindness with evil. As a member of the Central Plains, the sword master showed the temperament of a grandmaster. Crimson Drill is the Crimson Drill demon sword from 4,000 years ago. It has been stained with the blood of countless people, and its resentment is extraordinary. Now, I have no strength to guard it. If this sword falls into the hands of evil people, it will become a disaster. Jiming Marquis, since you pulled out this sword, you have the responsibility to guard it and not let it fall into the hands of others. The sword master waved his hand and returned the sword. Sword master, are you not worried that I am the source of the disaster? Ning Chen asked slowly. The great Xia Jiming Marquis who once protected the world with his life cannot be the source of the disaster, the sword master replied. Hearing this, Ning Chen fell silent. After a long while, he said indifferently, I will give the sects of the Central Plains a chance, but only once. It is to repay the sword master's kindness today. Thank you. The sword master said seriously. Back then, the sects of the Central Plains had gathered all the forces of the world and still could not kill the young man in front of him. Now that he had returned alive, with his intelligence and strength, if he really wanted to take revenge, the entire Central Plains would fall into panic. Seeing that the serious matter was over and the atmosphere was becoming stiff, Qing Ning stepped forward and said politely, "Sword Master, it is late. There are still some things to deal with in competitive Peak City. We will return first. The world is chaotic. Be careful," the Sword Master instructed. "Okay." Qing Ning nodded. Looking at the people beside her, she turned and walked out of the study. Ning Chen followed, but after a few steps, he stopped and said, "Sword Master, wants to go out." Hearing this, the Sword Master thought for a moment and said, "Sorry to trouble you." Ning Chen understood what the Sword Master meant and walked away. On the way back to competitive Edge City, the group of 2 became 3, with the addition of a little girl with braided hair. She was beaming with joy and chattering non-stop. When dawn broke, the 3 of them returned to competitive Edge City. Qing Ning returned to her palace while stayed by Ning Chen's side. "You're lying. You're called Ning Chen, not White Jade Jing." Pouted unhappily. During that period of time, it was called White Jade Capital, Ning Chen casually said. "I don't want to be with you. I want to find Big Sister Bai," protested. "Your Big Sister Bai isn't here right now." "I don't know where she went," Ning Chen replied. "You're lying to me." No longer trusted him. "I'm not lying to you," Ning Chen denied. "One adult and one child, one human and one demon." Strangely, they didn't have any communication barriers. Facing a little girl who wasn't a threat at all, the demon's instinctive wariness decreased a lot. As she drank tea, she thought about things and answered the little girl's questions intermittently. Outside the palace, Qing Ning looked at Wenxian Palace not far away and smiled faintly. It seemed that bringing that little girl here was the right choice. Although the demon's body was trying its best to imitate the phoenix body, it still lacked the warmth and coldness of human nature. It might not be a problem in the short term, but in the long term, it might arouse suspicion. "Qing Ning, Master just sent news that your 3rd senior sister has also come down the mountain," Bai Lingling walked up and said. "3rd senior sister?" Hearing this, Qing Ning's eyes flashed with surprise. 3rd senior sister was also coming. 3rd senior sister was a true genius among geniuses on the mountain. Perhaps this kind of phrase wasn't enough to describe how terrifying her talent was. The most powerful person on the mountain was undoubtedly Master. The other person was eldest senior sister. She cultivated the clear sky glass art and was between half venerable and human supreme. She wasn't a supreme, but she was even stronger than a supreme. The 3rd person was 3rd senior sister. She was also at the peak of half venerable. However, because of her cultivation, she was slightly weaker than eldest senior sister. "Your 3rd senior sister has broken through to the peak stage," Bai Lingling said again. "How is that possible?" Qing Ning was shocked. After a while, the shock on her face gradually faded. Perhaps nothing was impossible for her 3rd senior sister. "Master sent your 3rd senior sister down the mountain. Other than supporting the Central Plains sects, there should be some other mission. However, this girl's actions are too worrisome. Qing Ning, if you have time, keep an eye on her," Bai Lingling said helplessly. "Okay." Qing Ning nodded and didn't refuse. Compared to her terrifying talent, she was more famous for her terrifying personality. When she thought up to here, Qing Ning couldn't help but be slightly worried. Presently, the situation in the central prefecture was already so chaotic, so 3rd senior sister's arrival would only add to the chaos. Moreover, this clone of Ning Chen's wasn't easy to deal with as well, so they would definitely fight each other when they encountered each other. Just as the 2 of them were talking, a guard quickly walked over from outside Wenxian Palace. He half knelt and respectfully said, "Advisor, the Alliance Lord requests to see you." "Understood. You can leave now." "Yes." Not long after, Ning Chen walked out of the palace and walked towards the conference hall on the other side. Behind him, followed him like a little tail. Although she said she didn't want to be with a certain someone, she still followed him. Within the conference hall, Zhao Liusu quietly waited. When she saw the little girl behind Ning Chen, she frowned at first, but she quickly covered it up. Advisor, there's progress in the battle. Also, the other 3 regions have sent new peak experts over. They should be here in 2 days, said Zhao Liusu. Ning Chen picked up the battle reports from the east and read them one by one. Then, he raised his head and asked, who are the experts they sent? There's a human sovereign from each of the 3 regions, but, at this point, Zhao Liusu changed the topic. She hesitated for a moment before continuing, the sovereign from West Buddha's homeland has just entered the perfection stage. However, there's something wrong with his personality. Now is a crucial time for the 5 Territory Alliance. If these people offend you in any way, I hope that you can forgive them. Hearing this, Ning Chen's eyes slightly narrowed. A newly advanced sovereign was actually able to make Zhao Liusu, the leader of the 5 Territory Alliance, give him special instructions. It seemed that the sovereign from West Buddha's homeland wasn't someone easy to deal with. At the same time, in the west of Zhongzhou, a girl in a green dress appeared. She walked alone in the boundless wilderness. Xia Mountain's 3rd senior sister, Shi Piaoxiu. She was the one with the most terrifying talent on the mountain for countless years. She didn't put much effort into cultivation, but it didn't stop her cultivation from progressing much faster than anyone of the same age on the mountain. Everyone on the mountain was a genius, but Shi Piaoxiu was a genius among geniuses. After 100 miles, a mountain blocked her path. However, Shi Piaoxiu didn't stop at all. She broke through every mountain she encountered. Step by step, the entire mountain collapsed. Sand and pebbles flew everywhere as it was split into 2. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.